Here we go. Here we go. We're streaming again. We've done it yet again. Glory be and mercy me. We've done it yet again. Here we go. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. So, it's hot. It's hot. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in Toronto. This is the hottest it has been for quite some time here in the lovely city of Toronto. This is John Sanderson on JON Radio, talking to you live from the city of Toronto. I hope you guys all had a beautiful weekend. It was a long weekend out here. We had the CNE, the air show. So we had lots of constant reminders that we are ruled by imperialists, right? Who like to throw jets overhead. Lots of enormous overhead rumbling happening all the time. Big crazy noises constantly reminding us of the militarization of our society and the normalization of the militarization of our society. Yeah, let's leave that on the Discord, Eric. I think it makes sense to me now. I think the truth, Eric, is that I didn't realize that your moniker on the Discord was you. And so I thought that you were responding to yourself instead of putting something in that was you. I had inverted it in my mind. Everything's fine, bud. Don't worry about it. And the... and I'm tired, man. I'm tired. Big capitalist weekend. Big capitalist work. Constantly dealing with the overwhelming militarization of our society. The overwhelming desire of our society to just kind of shrug off the reality of the climate change crisis. Had the pleasure of going to a Socialist Action event, which was really uplifting. I really would like to encourage everybody. I said it over and over again, and I'll say it again and again and again when I do this stream. Find a local group. It's great that you guys are here. Absolutely, it's great that you guys are here. Like, for real, and I'm so happy that you guys are all here. I'm so happy that you're all listening in. I'm so happy that you tune in. It makes me feel good to know that there are people on the other end actually listening in. But please, do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor and find a local group to actually get involved in. Because if you get involved in a local group, when you go and you actually spend time with that group, it alleviates a lot of psychological tension. You feel like you're not so alone. You feel like you can participate in something. You feel like you're able to build up on something. Eric writes, you're returning to school as well as you're looking for a part-time job? Well, my man, I'm glad to hear that. I know that you've been struggling with the long COVID. I know that you've been struggling out there. So I'm really glad to hear that you are actually finally at a state where you can go back to school. What are you thinking about taking, my man? That's really good for you, my man. I recently was put forward with the idea of going back to school myself, and I decided to decline. That I don't really trust the school system. I don't really trust it myself. I'm not really interested in it, right? Finishing your degree, fantastic, my man. Fantastic, my man. Everybody, but I acknowledge that everybody's on their own journey. And the decisions that you make for yourself are always good decisions because you are the expert of your own life. And not every decision that we need to make is based exclusively on the idea that we need to monetize ourselves to these capitalists. Not every decision that we make is all about, hey, let's make money for people who are trying to abandon us as fast as possible. Ligon Disease chimes in with also graduating soon after 10 years. Good for you, my man. Good for you, my man. And it's tough going now. Like, it's tough going. The way that our education system works, the debt that it piles on people, I think the worst thing that our education system actually does to people is that it will train them for jobs that don't exist. I think that's the worst thing about our education system, is that it is unintegrated into what we call the private system, the private market. And so you can go into a course, a 4-year course, which of course, because the education system is itself a private, a for-profit model, what they'll do is they'll take a 1-year course and they'll extend it to 4 years because they want to get 4 years out of you instead of 1 year, because it usually only takes about 1 year to actually train somebody how to do something. But they'll take 4 years out of you so that they can get more money. Mikhail, good to see you. And then by the time those 4 year passes, the job that you have been training for may be outsourced, defunded. It may have been rendered obsolete, right? Haltosis 911 on Twitch here writes, I think if I went back to school, it would be torturous for the professors. Have you considered the effects of social hierarchy on this issue? Yeah. I tend to agree with that idea. I think it would be torturous for me listening to some of these professors say some of this clueless bullshit that they have to say, right? There's a curriculum, then the curriculum is set by the state. So we elect a bunch of capitalists, and what do the capitalists do? They put in front of us a bunch of pro-capitalist propaganda that we're all just supposed to go, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll put that in the paper. These are the facts of what actually happened. And then we just end up being a society of dummies, more or less. And so I don't think I want to put myself through that kind of torturous situation of pulling teeth the whole time. And having them feel as though I'm pulling teeth, because that's what I would be doing, is I would be pulling teeth. Eric writes, I just learned some statistics about STEM graduate yesterday. In the U.S., there's something like 60K STEM graduates. This STEM represents science, technology, education, and math. Recently, they have actually extended STEM to include an A. So now it is actually STEAM, because they're actually including the arts in this, because I think they have started to realize that by removing the humanities from people's studies, we've ended up being a society of psychopaths. And so now there is this kind of desperate attempt to re-acknowledge this. You're right, I said education. You're right, Haltosis. Correction, it's engineering. That's quite correct. And so what we end up with is a lot of highly technical psychopaths who understand how to make weapons and understand how to manipulate systems for their own profits and their own benefit, but are either illiterate or unwilling to even dabble in the idea that maybe there is such a thing as morality, maybe there is such a thing as right and wrong, maybe there is such a thing as being curious about what your actions are actually going to do on an ethical standpoint. Right, the best that these guys actually have to do is they take a 1 credit hour critical thinking course that teaches them if-then statements, basically, so that they understand that, like, yeah, if you push a red button that blows up a building, the building will blow up. There you go. But there's no discussion about whether or not this is correct. There's no discussion about what this is going to do. There's no discussion about, is it okay for a small group of psychopaths to dominate the masses through the force of systemic wealth holding, right? That's literally tied to genocide and slavery, right? There's just no conversation about it whatsoever, and there's your stem right there. There's the stem of all of this, right? So they're trying to put in that A. They're trying to reestablish something like the arts, but I know for myself, like, people make fun of me for going into the arts. I get made fun of all the time. Well, not so much anymore, because I think people understand that boomers are psycho, and that whole idea of, like, well, why'd you take the arts if you didn't think you were going to get a job? When the year that I graduated from my university, like, I went to university for theater. That is what I went to university for. I have a degree in theater from the University of Manitoba. It's hanging on my wall right in front of me. The year that I graduated, arts funding across Canada was cut in some places as heavily as 80%, right? So and then what happens is you have a whole bunch of illiterate, dumb engineering types making fun of arts people when the arts people just had their funding cut by 80%. Like, and they all just get to be like, haha, I'm so smart, you should have just done engineering. Did the engineering fields get their funding cut by 80%? No. Oh, well, what the fuck do you think happens here, bud? Like, what do you think you end up with? And what you end up with is a society that doesn't have a culture. And so you end up with a society where the culture is just garbage and trash movies like Marvel shit. And because people don't actually know what culture looks like, because they don't experience it with any regularity whatsoever, then they replace what should be a culture with Marvel children's movies and garbage like this, right? And then everything just becomes about enriching, like, you know, the 10 actors who do Marvel movies and the studio executives that fund them. Like, that's what the whole culture is now. And the idea that somebody might actually have, like, an interesting idea, a thought, something worth actually writing about and telling a story about, and then actually telling that story and having it be spread around with any success whatsoever is just gone out the window, right? It's just totally gone out the window. Because even if you did manage to make something that had any value whatsoever, people are so fucking exhausted and so just absolutely psychologically depleted that they don't want to spend 2 hours sitting down quietly watching something that is thought-provoking or interesting, right? Because part of the issue with something that's actually thought-provoking or interesting is that it's kind of boring, right? There's something boring about something like theater. There's something boring about films that are actually thought-provoking, that actually will make you think about something. Because it's only when you get into that kind of bored state of mind, into that kind of slow state of mind, that your thoughtful mind can actually even engage. And so if you're just used to having keys dangled in front of you the whole time, which is essentially Marvel movies, then you're going to watch something like Glengarry Glen Ross, right? Which is actually a very powerful film, or Wag the Dog, right? And any of the David Mamet stuff, you're gonna watch this stuff and you're just gonna be like, snoozer. What's this? Who even cares? Like, where's the big giant space pillar? You know, because we just don't have a culture. And in my view, this whole STEM thing, right, and the attempt to pull it back into STEAM really tells you something about it. And if we actually cared about rebuilding a culture, the very first thing that we would do is actually fund it. But we don't do that, right? Because the free market will decide, right? Good ideas beat bad ideas. Hiltosis writes, there are only 10 orchestras in the U.S. that hire musicians full-time. Getting a full-time music gig is like breaking into professional sports or winning the lottery. Yeah, it's a very tiny, small group of people who actually manage to do it. And the more we learn about it, the more we see that it's not even to the benefit of those people, right? Especially professional sports is a great thing to bring up, right? The people who are getting involved in professional sports, they get involved in professional sports with this idea that they're hitting the big time and they're going to get a whole bunch of money and all that kind of stuff. But what they really end up being is people who generate money for other people, right? Like the people who play football. Football is like a really, really case in point kind of thing. That most of the people who are playing football, right, are putting themselves in harm's way, are experiencing trauma on a regular basis, are damaging themselves on a regular basis, and sure, they're making a lot of money, it sounds like, but when you consider how short the window is for them to make that money, as well as the absolute decimation of the health of the person actually doing the sport, like, the whole thing is a grift. The whole thing is a scam. Like, it's not a win for these people. You end up with this sort of elated experience and this sort of odd experience of being a football player, but you don't end up. But you end up with microfractions, and you end up with concussions, and you end up with all of these concerns that are just rocking yourself completely, and that's where all your money ends up going, right? Because the healthcare isn't provided for; it's a private system, right? So you got to spend all your money to take care of the health concerns that you got getting the money in the first place, right? Like, it's a grift. Meanwhile, the owners of the sport, right, your owners, are the ones that walk away with the $1 billion. You're not walking away with that. even though you're the one that got your head smashed in. Sorry, Eric, I went on a tangent there. I learned something interesting about STEM graduates yesterday. In the U.S., there's something like 60K STEM graduates, while Russia is about the same amount, even though they have a smaller economy and population. But China blows everyone with a STEM graduation of 200 million a year. Well, a big reason for this, Eric, is that China doesn't, China's not dicking around, right? People are so dim-witted when it comes to what's going on with China. Like, China does something that blows us away, right? It's called planning, right? Like, this whole idea of actually sitting down and making a plan, having a thought where we should connect dots together, right? Here in America, where like free market decides, okay, well, what China does is they say, well, we would like a whole bunch of people studying quantum mechanics. We just want a bunch of people studying quantum computing, right? We're going to put aside a whole lot of money to train those people and then have them go work in that field. And we're doing that on purpose, right? There's no private system. There's no sense of competition. There's none of this garbage that doesn't work, obviously. Instead, they just say, oh, we would like to have as many quantum mechanicists as we possibly can. So we're going to have a system that trains and then employs people in order to study quantum mechanics. And what's the result of that? China is now the industry leader in most fields and most industries in computing, robotics, AI, quantum mechanics. And how have they managed it? By doing it. By not entrusting it to this ridiculous cartoon system that fails the second it's tried. They're not reinventing the wheel every single year. They're not constantly looking at one another as enemies and as competitors. They're actually working together to be like, hey, we made this discovery. We should let you know about this. Oh my God, you did this. Okay. And they're constantly building on each other's discoveries, right? Because they're not actually fighting against one another. Mikhail says maybe part of the rise in autism spectrum diagnosis. I don't know nearly enough about this, and I feel like I'm just going to wade into difficult waters if I start talking about my suspicions. Like, it is interesting that autism has suddenly shown up, right? Like, it's interesting that suddenly now there's, like, autistic people everywhere. And it could possibly be that they're just being more represented in the media. That's completely possible. Right? It's and it's totally possible that it's just one of those things that existed, but nobody ever really thought about it. They were always just, people are just like, yeah, that's just Jim, right? Jim's like that, right? And now, because there's a more openness to it, it's more visible and people recognize it faster. That's completely possible. It could also be that we're literally poisoning ourselves. And so now we're getting a lot of this stuff, right? Right? So it's a very complex issue that I don't have enough information to discuss with any credibility. So it's not something that I really... I shouldn't be the guy to talk on it. I should be reading from an article is what I should be doing on that particular issue. I hope you guys are doing really well out there, man. I feel like I'm just kind of like... Sometimes I do feel like I'm kind of mouthing off, you know? Like, and it's like that autism thing. Like, it's just like, I don't want to be the guy that's just mouthing off. I want to actually talk from a place of knowing what I'm talking about. I want to have facts. I want to have evidence. I want to have sources, which is why it's super important for us to take a look at what places like Abacus Data are saying. This is what Gen Z thinks, right? What are the top issues facing Canada? This is the Canadian commie, after all. I hope you're all doing really well out there, wherever you're at. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, hit the bells, hit the whistles, donate $1. Tell people I exist. More important than anything else, tell people I exist. Yeah, the infamous, good to see you, my man. Matthias, Baked Potato, absolutely good to see you guys. I'm so glad that you guys are here, right? It lifts my heart up to know that people are actually tuning in. Yeah, you have to understand, China is run by really smart and capable people. They're not your average grifting politician with law degrees like here in the West. Yeah, Xi Jinping has a doctorate in law, but also a degree in Marxist-Leninism as well. Well, I think it just has to do with priorities, right? Like, the priority of the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government, and the people who get into those positions is to improve the quality of life for their citizens. That's their priority, right? The priority of the people who are in our system is to enrich themselves. And that's the way the system is designed. The system's designed for that. Whereas the Chinese system is designed to vet those people out on purpose and to treat people who are in it for themselves just to make money as corrupt. And proofs in the pudding, right? That the people of China are more confident in their system than we are by a factor of 3, right? By like this is the thing that kills me the most when people are like, I'm for the Chinese people, but I'm against the Chinese Communist Party. I'm not for the Chinese government. It's like, well, if you're for the Chinese people, then you should be supporting the Chinese government, because that's what the Chinese people do. In wide margins. Wide margins. Yeah, Mikhail writes, I think they broadened the definition of autism, which allowed more frequent diagnosis. Well, there was also that period of time where there was like what was called Asperger's for a period of time. And so it is sort of like a shifting thing. But you might be right in that account. Again, I feel like it's something, if we would like to speak with this with more confidence, we should begin by finding papers, and we should begin by like reading what the experts are actually saying. But this is not it's not my forte or my specialty, frankly. Grinning says China produces 1.6 to 4.7 million STEM grads per year, depending on who's reporting the stat. Yeah, I mean, it's better than what we're doing by a lot. Like, and to me, it's that juncture between the graduate stepping off into employment. That's the juncture that is the most important part, right? Because you can train like 100 million people. If there's 10 jobs, well, tough shit, right? Like, none of that is actually going anywhere. And something like, I forget what the exact stat is, but it's a healthy percentage of people who go to university to train don't actually end up using their training, right? They don't end up using their degree in the field that they were actually trained for. And that's an organizational disaster. And it's not a small number. Even if it was something like 20%, it's an enormous amount of people to just have gone through an education system to get a degree that was useless, that went nowhere, right? Whereas the Chinese are like, no, we are training you for this. That this exists, this is what we're doing. So it's a 1-to-1. Like, you are being trained in this, and then you go work in that. And there's none of this dickering around. There's none of this, like, ceding all of the authority that's possible to just the free hand of the invisible market, right? Which is just like a crazy amount of nonsense, right? Hiltosis writes, you can cobble together a career in music by teaching, taking temporary assignments in local orchestras, but there's no real money in the arts unless you know someone. Yeah, and I mean, and so what's the result in our music, right? Our music is essentially and like, what are you going to do with all that ass inside those jeans? Yeah, how many songs do I need to hear about people's asses? And here's my opinion on my butt, right? Like, and that's not to denigrate rap or art as like like our society, like, these art forms are genuine, but they are the basics, right? Like something like rap, spoken word, right? Something like comedy. I've been saying this about stand-up comedy for a long, long time. Like, stand-up comedians will talk about comedy as if it's like, this is a uniquely American art form, uniquely American stand-up comedy. Yes, the unique art form of one person standing up and saying funny things. There certainly is no history whatsoever in Europe, Russia, Africa, South America, of a person standing around saying funny and witty things. And people being like, oh, what a funny and witty and interesting person. Right? That definitely doesn't exist at all. To me, the reality is that if you have a society of unfunny, uninteresting people, then when somebody actually stands up and is funny and interesting, it's worth paying them. That's really the truth of it. In a society of interesting and funny people, right, who are well trained and well educated and who actually have insight into arts and into this kind of stuff, nobody would pay for like a stand-up comedian, right? That's why you have like plays. That's why you have like larger scale cultural events, right? That's why you have these sorts of things. But all of that's been destroyed by the hand of capital. And so what you're down to your basics, right? Guy standing around telling funny stories. So instead of having people act out these stories, instead of having actors and singers and musicians, instead of having like the larger scale art form, you're just down to like, and so I was standing at the top of the stairs, and then I looked down the stairs, and there was my mom. And everyone goes, gasp. Like, it's a regression. It's a massive, massive regression. That not that long ago, we would take those stories and we would pay lots of people to act these things out in a dramatic fashion live in front of us. And that was considered art. That was considered something that was genuine and something that was real. And now it's literally just people being like, so I went to the doctor, right? And it's good enough for us. Like, it's wild, actually. Like, it's really, really wild. Oh yeah, and the infamous is nailing it here. Hip-hop has been infiltrated for sure. It's counter-revolutionary bubblegum bullshit. Yeah. I mean, there was a period of time, like Fuck the Police is a good example, right? Somebody like Tupac is a great example, right? There was a period of time where this stuff was actually revolutionary. It actually had a revolutionary potential. But now, like, Snoop Dogg is, like, hanging out with, like, Martha Stewart, right? Like, you got a guy who, when he was young, was part of, like, a very dangerous to the establishment movement, who straight up was in trial for murder, and now he just like hangs out with Martha Stewart, right? He has a mansion. They all bought out. They all got sold out, right? That's all. They all just bought in. They all sold out. So very, very simple, straightforward stuff that happens all the time. Yep, Radio Halifax, got a degree in electronics, 6 years of study, graduated into a recession. By the time the recession was over, my degree was out of date. Yeah, and things are happening so fast now. Like, things are happening so fast now that there is no, like, you're basically out of date the minute you start studying, right? That by the time the information has made it into the university, for the university to turn around and teach it to you, it's already out of date. Like, that's how fast it's moving now. And so by the time you get into the field and by the time you're dealing with what's going on in the actual real world, everything you've learned is already done, right? Like, it's such a stupid way to organize a society, and yet here we are. So, Gen Z, facing issues, top issues facing Canada. So there are goods and there are bads in this, right? Let's talk about just straight up the bads. Federal vote intention, conservative. If you're voting conservative at this point, I just got to tell you, I just do think you're kind of a dupe. It's sort of weird that literally nobody else has figured out that, like, yeah, we should talk to people as though we understand that they are going through suffering. Right? Like, I understand why people are leaning on the Conservatives. It's because rhetorically the Conservatives have figured out what to say. If you listen to Pierre Poilievre's speeches, if you listen to the Conservatives actually talking, right? Like, they understand what they need to say, right? And what they need to say is, man, we understand you're hurting, right? Like, it's gotten tougher out there, right? And the Liberals aren't doing anything about it. So vote Conservative. And of course, they don't say, we're going to do something about it. They just say, vote Conservative, right? Because if you don't make any promises, then you don't need to actually do anything. The implication is that they'll do something about it, but they're not going to do that. And if it takes, like, the meagerest glance at Canadian history to see what actually is going to happen. And it's not even, it's not, like, they're not even pretending, right? They're not even pretending, right? Like, Pierre Poilievre declares, I am going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land. Like, so they're privatizing the system. They're saying it to you directly. They're not hiding it, right? And everybody goes, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's take public spaces and public land and things that the public actually own and have control of, that we vote an elector, a prime minister, in order to actually have control of and regulate. Let's take all of that and give it to rich people. That's a good idea. Good idea. Yeah, we're super smart. Because the problem is the government. The government is the problem. Like, they're being very explicit, very upfront. Like, defund, and their ideas are all very dumb, right? Like, that's the thing that shocks me the most about the conservatives, is like, and the people who are supporting conservative at this point, is that their ideas are very dumb, right? Like defund the CBC. There's an extremely dumb idea that only a very dumb person would actually go like, yeah, let's defund the CBC. Even if you take it at the absolute worst position that it could possibly be. The CBC is state propaganda. It disseminates what the state wants you to know about what's going on. Yeah, and? Do you not realize that we elect those people? What's the entire point of having elections? The entire point of having elections is to select people who get into office, and then what? Those people are just not supposed to have access to a system by which they can communicate to us? Like, we're not supposed to actually communicate? Like, if they find something out, they're not supposed to disseminate that into the public? No, instead what they want to do is they want to make it so that that doesn't exist, so that the only voices that are heard in the society are billionaires. Because that's what's going to happen, right? Because who's left if you get rid of the CBC? Who's left? You got the National Post, owned by billionaires. You've got the Globe and Mail, literally owned by the richest billionaire, David Thompson, the Thompson Foundation, right? Okay. So you're basically saying, I don't like that the people I elect want to have opinions in the public space, and I want all opinions that disseminate into the public space to be the opinions that billionaires put forward exclusively. It's a wild position, man. Like, it's a really, really, really wild position. A smaller government footprint, CBC included, isn't a bad idea. I mean, it depends on what you mean. Like, what does that mean? Because if you have a smaller, what we would call a smaller government footprint, that means that your corporate footprint is bigger, right? So you're essentially saying that the people who elect people into positions of office should have less power, and that billionaires should have more power. That's fundamentally your position. It's not a position that I can tolerate or take seriously, right? Especially if you refuse to acknowledge, like, yeah, that the government is essentially owned by these billionaires in the first place. That the reason why they want to be rid of these institutions like the CBC, right, like our healthcare system, like our education system, the reason why they want to get rid of these things is so that we don't have the tools in order to fight back against them. That's the whole point. So that we can't use something like the CBC. Like, what would happen if we were to elect, like, even slightly more to the left, like, let's say NDP? What would happen if we were to elect somebody like the NDP? Well, they might start putting forward information through their system, the CBC, that the billionaire class doesn't want you to know, right? And instead, their entire goal is to just make it so that we don't have access to even the tools by which we disseminate that information, right? Like, so forget about like McCarthy style propaganda. Literally, the ability of the government to communicate to its own people, and they should just get rid of it. And you can have a discussion. Silverlight writes, things just keep growing and getting more complex. I think it's not necessary. It doesn't mean to cede control. Some of the things we're doing are simply not needed and invalid. We should stop doing them. Yeah, like that to me is a classic conservative position, right? That's just like a classic, like, hold on a moment here. If I am going to spend money on the government, then I want my money to be spent efficiently. But that's no longer what the discourse is about. The discourse is literally government bad, get rid of government completely, 100%. Like, get rid of the CBC, get rid of any public option whatsoever, right? Cede all power and control to corporate power. They're literally saying it to you. And so this narrative, this other narrative that you're bringing up, which is a more honest narrative of like, I just want my money to be spent efficiently, right? It doesn't even exist in the discourse anymore. It's gone. That's something that leftists will say to one another, right? On YouTube channels like this. It's not happening in the media. It's not happening in the conversation at all, and it's not what the leaders of the country are actually saying. It's not what Pierre Poilievre is saying. Pierre Poilievre is saying things like this: I am going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land. Like this is a big Ontario is open for business moment. This is literally, we're selling off assets that Canadians own to private owners. That's what we're doing, and claiming that we're doing it for the benefit of Canada somehow. How is that going to benefit Canada? To ensure that the electorate has less power in the conversation. If public land is crowned land in Canada, does this mean that public land is in fact private land? No. Like public land, crowned land, that is public land, like by definition. And what is public land? Right? It's land that any member of the public is permitted to use. So you think about like a library, right? This is a good example. Like we've become so disconnected from the reality of right, but we don't have a king, for goodness sakes. We don't have a king. We've become owned by the king. The crown owns the land. Right? We've become so disconnected from the idea that there should be public land. We've become so disconnected from the idea that the public should just have access to things that we don't really even understand how these systems even work or what they're even for, right? Like in the most possible technical way, Mikhail, this is correct. In like the absolute barest bones, most technical way. But it's not like Charles can roll up and be like, I am King Charles. And this land is crown land. And so I shall put a gallant stables here. You know, like that's not what's actually going on. Is that a lot of these terms and a lot of these things are just holdovers from the way the system used to work that just haven't been changed. That most of the power of our system actually has been disseminated into the Prime Minister's office, right? Yeah, it's the legal fuckery the power structure is built upon. You are correct. You are technically correct, and there is a lot of weird, old kind of fucked up things that still exist within the system that most people either don't know about or they understand that like, if you are to start dicking around with this, people are gonna push back on you pretty hard, right? Like it's not as clean as like, hold on a moment, I can destroy the city of Toronto with a wave of my hand, right? Like it's not that simple. It's not as simple as saying, oh, this is crown land, therefore we can I'm trying to think of a ridiculous thing. We can tear it all up and make a pool out of it. Like it's not actually how that works. The that public land, right, is essentially at its most basic considered open to the public. That's the whole point of having public land. So again, you think about something like a library, right? A library is a very, very clear, obvious example of public land. It is a place a person can go, be in, hang out, get some assistance, right? Without the expectation of needing to purchase anything, without there needing to be an exchange monetarily of any sort whatsoever. That they simply are in the library. And certainly there are rules, right? Just like you can't be drunk or like pissing everywhere, right? Like just basic shit. But like if you went into like a Walmart and like tried to hang out in a Walmart, there would be this expectation of like, hey, are you buying something? What are you doing here? Right? They'd have people following you, and there would be cameras, because they'd be like, okay, if you're not buying something, you're obviously stealing something, right? That's the whole point. And that, to me, is the major difference between like a private land and public land, is that on public land, you just exist on it. You could just be on public land. And the goal of the conservatives is to make it so there is no such thing as public land anymore, that everything is privatized, that everything is owned, that if you're standing on a piece of land, the owner can come over and tell you to get lost, right? Like those sort of basic things. And it's just sort of weird that we've done this. It's just sort of weird that we're doing this. It's weird that we're just ceding public spaces to these private holders. It's very strange. Mr. Moon, good to see you, my man. Silverlight writes, that's unfortunate. Just want things to make sense and be efficient. I don't care how or who or anything else, really. Just honest, simple, get her done. Yeah, I mean, but that's not what the system's about anymore, Silverlight, if it ever was. Right? The system is about enriching a small group of billionaires. That's what the system is about. And if things are made inefficient or complex, it's done on purpose. Right? These are ways by which the billionaire class actively work in order to get what they want, right? That if they can go into a system and get one of their surrogates to make things inefficient and make things complex, and then say, oh, the government is making things inefficient and complex, then they can say, well, then what we need is efficiency, and the private sector is more efficient, so let's privatize it. Right? Everything we're watching today is 100% a grift in order to privatize all of our public systems. Right? That they are absolutely saying out loud in front of us constantly over and over and over again, the trouble is the government, that we defund and make things inefficient and complex on purpose. And so when you stand up and say, I just want things to be efficient, well, the very first thing that you should say is, that's why we need to get rid of these fucking losers working for billionaires. Right? People like Poilievre, people like Trudeau, people like Jagmeet Singh. Or we just keep voting for people who are working for the billionaire class. And it doesn't look like we're going to stop. Right? It doesn't look like we're interested in stopping that. Like we're just gonna keep going to the polls and being like, billionaire owner, please. Who's more owned by billionaires? Oh, this guy. Vote yes. Vote yes for Poilievre. Yep, capitalism is the privatization and the commodification of the commons. Exactly. And it's just become so common that occurs that people don't even think about it anymore. We're just so used to it. And so we are heading yeah, I love this. My friend refuses to believe the conservatives will dismantle our free healthcare system because it hasn't happened yet, except it has. Right? Like they literally say out loud constantly that that's their goal. They're constantly saying it over and 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 over again that that's their goal. Every single time they get into power, what do? They privatize a piece of it, right? Every single conservative in Canadian history has done exactly this. And to pretend like it's not happening is willful delusion at this point. Like we can say it that boldly. Like you're just being willfully ignorant, willfully delusional. Like for fucking real. Doug Ford has done it. Harris did it, right? Stephen Harper did it. Pierre Poilievre will definitely do it. Like their goal constantly, and they're always trying to pitch different ways to privatize. We could have a two-tier system. We could have that. We're noticing there's an inefficiency here. So what we should do is just take this little part of it and privatize it, or this little part, and this little part, or this little part, or this little part, right? And they do it every single time. It's so obvious that that's what they're doing. That for somebody to stand up and say that they're not going to do it, it's like, what are you talking about? They tell you that that's what they're doing. They say it out loud in speeches in front of you. Like this position that the conservatives are not interested in privatizing the healthcare system is deluded. Like just absolutely raving, foaming at the mouth, flat earth shit. Silverlight writes, never mind healthcare or other social programs. Yeah, increase recruitment for maid euthanasia. More euthanasia. More euthanasia. Yeah, we need to deprivatize, decommodify, yeah. So did the Liberals lose support to the Conservatives or the NDP or both? It was both. Yeah, it's been both. that the NDP have been sitting at around 19%, and they've been sitting there for a little while, but they were up at around 23, 24%. Like, they were basically where the Liberals are right now, and then the Liberals were up where the Conservatives are right now. And that support has dropped on both sides. And I think it is just because of the inability of this Liberal NDP alliance. So for those of you who don't understand how this is actually working, right, because I know there's some Americans in here, so, and that's understandable. So in our system, as you can see, there are many parties, right? These parties are broken into ridings, right? So very similar to like Congress seats, if you think about it that way. We don't vote for our president or our prime minister. We don't vote for them, right? We vote for our party through a House of Commons, which would be like your Congress system. Right, so we vote for ridings. Ridings are individual seats, and those individual seats all come together to make the government. And it's from the group that has the most seats is the one that forms the government, right? Occasionally what can happen is that no one party, no individual party, has enough seats in order to form government. So what you end up with is you end up with a collaboration, or you end up with a new election gets called. That has happened before as well, where the party with the most seats could not create a deal with any other party to form government, and so you get another election, like a snap election. Seriously, Canadians hate that, and it's usually the party that is the one where the blame falls that pays for it. And people do. It's actually historically, it's actually quite serious. That if let's say the Liberals are the ones that are considered the rulers, they had a majority government, which means they had enough seats to form government. Well, let's say the next election it's a minority government, so they don't have enough seats, but then they go and they can't make a deal and they can't form up, and so there's a snap election. Well, then the Liberals would lose a lot of support. And that's typically what has happened. And so what the Liberals have done is worked with the NDP. And the NDP, the narrative that Conservatives like to peg the NDP with is that the NDP is propping up the Liberals, right? And this alliance was pitched at the Canadian people as being like a benefit. But the truth is that the NDP are pro-imperialist, they're pro-CIA, they're pro-CSIS, they have voted for every single bailout, they have basically every corporate benefit that people have wanted to put through, that the wealthy have wanted to put through, the NDP has gone along with it, right? So they're like a junior partner in the Liberal Party at this point, and most people, especially given what Canadians are actually concerned about, let's get down to that, right? What are Canadians actually concerned about? So first of all, before we get to that though, federal vote intention by age, it does look like it's pretty across the board. The younger you are, the more likely you are to vote NDP. The less likely you are to vote Conservative. Liberal support amongst Gen Z is about the same as liberal support elsewhere, except amongst the boomers, where it's much larger amongst the boomers. This is a terrible chart to look at for both liberals and conservatives, by the way. Like this should be concerning for both liberals and conservatives to look at this and be like, oh yeah, the youth, they hate us. Huh. Maybe it's because we're completely fucking abandoning them. Top 3 issues. What do Gen Z actually care about? Number 1, 73%. Not shocking. The rising cost of living. Wow. Blown away, everybody. Holy cow. People are worried about the rising cost of living. Not even close. Number 1 issue. Big red, blank, like, smacking you right in the face. If you cannot figure out what it is Canadians are concerned about, then you are dumb, and we get to say it. We don't need to be nice about it. You're a dummy. There it is, 73%. The next concern that Canadians are concerned about, housing affordability and accessibility. So shouldn't that be like the rising cost of living, right? Like healthcare is third, right? Then the economy. I love that the economy is its own thing, right? Like, what's the economy? You know, it's literally like they might as well have just put in there Jesus Christ. How do you feel about Jesus Christ? Climate change and the environment is number 5. Inequality and poverty, which again, I would be like the rising cost of living, right? 17%. Crime and public safety. So really think about this. How often do you hear about things like crime and public safety? How often are we hearing about things like immigration? How often are we hearing about the lack of freedom in Canada? How often are we hearing about the threat posed by China and Russia? 6%, right? 6% of people are like, yeah, the threat posed by Russia and China, 6%. Well, how often do we hear about that? A lot, right? A lot. We're hearing about that a lot. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is at 5%. How often are we hearing about the Russian invasion of Ukraine? 5%. Indigenous reconciliation, 5%. How often do we hear about Indigenous reconciliation while the concern is at 5%? And before people start losing their minds in the chat, because I know there's somebody out there that's like, Indigenous is the most important thing, and it is. I'm not trying to downplay it, right? But people are being thrown out into the streets. That's what's actually happening in Canada. So, Indigenous reconciliation, maybe we should have a reconciliation amongst ourselves before we start thinking about Indigenous reconciliation. Yep, Chinese election interference, 4%. And yet, how often do we hear about it, right? The rising cost of living should literally be the only thing that we're discussing. It should straight up be the only thing that we're discussing. And you guys know my point. You guys know my position. You guys know where I stand on this, right? Food and shelter should be free. We should be in these buildings. We should be actively participating in the generation and the maintenance of the system, right? That we should be going out and into the fields. We should be going into factories. We should be packaging the food. We should be involved in the process to the degree we must, which isn't that much, right? Like, before people start losing their minds and being like, oh, it's a slave system and you want to do, like, no. Like, literally, it doesn't take that much work. The only reason why it's organized this way is because the small group of owners think that they can make a small amount of money more by exploiting the populace more effectively, right? By having, like, a temporary foreign workers program, by increasing immigration and having desperate people come and do their work, right? So instead of actually focusing on and what's so shocking, right, about this is that the rising cost of living is literally 73%. What's the solution that we've been given? The only solution that has even been put on the table at all and has even been tried, the only solution has been increased interest rates. That's it. Literally the only thing that has even been tried. This sort of theory and this idea that what we'll do is we'll increase interest rates and that'll make it harder to borrow money and that'll mean that people won't be able to spend more money and so that'll bring down the cost of things. Has it worked? Obviously not, because it doesn't. Because that's not the point, right? It's a grift, obviously. The reason why they are raising the inflation rate is to chase smaller players out of the game, to bankrupt smaller players. That's the entire point. The billionaire class goes to their buddies at the Bank of Canada and says, hey, can you jack up the interest rates to make mom and pop go bust so that I get free assets? And the Bank of Canada, who is owned by these billionaires, goes, okay. And that's exactly what they do, right? And then the moment when raising the interest rates starts to affect the billionaire class, what are they going to do? Oh, suddenly the interest rates are coming down and the economy is stabilizing again, right? Right? Here, hold on a second, guys. I gotta save my pug. Milo. I know, buddy. I know. It's so dumb what we did to your face. I know. Everybody. everybody gets to listen to Milo snort away. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Do 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 do. Everybody was fast as lightning. Oh, I know, my man. Okay, let's get you sorted. You're a good boy, buddy. I love you. I love you, buddy. Oh, I know. It's so dumb what we've done to your face, isn't it? It's so dumb what we've done to your face, isn't it? What a dumb thing we've done to you. You okay? Whoa. That's a good boy, buddy. You're a good boy, my man. Good boy, buddy. Yeah, he's a good boy. Oh, poor little guy. Poor little guy. Yeah, Gen Zers are worried about the failures of capitalism. Yeah, but they won't ask them that question, right? They'll never actually say, hey, are you concerned about the systemic collapse of capitalism? Hey, are you worried that about how the system of capitalism is failing? They will literally never ask that question. You'll notice that's not on the chart, right? That's not a question that they ask them. They're willing to be like, hey, prices are going up. Are you concerned about it? But that's about it, right? Yeah, so high they had to put it out on multiple categories. Yeah, that's how they do. And so what's shocking, right? 73% of Canadians are concerned about the rising cost of living. What have the Liberals done? What are the NDP doing? Like, what are they actually doing? What are the policies that they're enacting? How are they confronting this? What is it that they're doing to actually help Canadians? Is it nothing? Yeah, it's a big old pile of nothing. A big old pile of zero, right? Big shocker, though, right? And incidentally, right, before anybody gets it in their head that I'm sitting here being like, and that's why we need to get Pierre in there and the Conservatives, right? This is the plan. This is the whole idea. This is how the system actually operates and actually works under a capitalist economy. Is that you elect somebody, they enact maybe one policy that the populace actually wants, right? And then it just turns into capitalist extraction. And that's the whole goal, is just extract as much wealth as possible with these guys as fast as you possibly can, right? And then the political opinion, the opinion of the political people, in this case the Liberals, will decline steadily because people will be like, these guys are just letting capitalists extract as much wealth as possible. What we need to do is vote for the Conservatives. And then we all vote for the Conservatives, and the Conservatives extract as much wealth as possible on behalf of the capitalists, which is the point. And then the ball passes back and forth. And as long as the ball passes back and forth between capitalists, it's just a system and a process of extraction of wealth. That's how it works. That's how the system actually operates. And it's not going to be too much longer until everyone starts to recognize that oh, hey, the reason why capitalism seems to have generated as much prosperity as it has is because it's stolen it, right? You can pretend as though you're generating prosperity as long as you're siphoning wealth from someone else's household, right? But as soon as that stops happening, right, as soon as you've extracted as much wealth as you can, or the other household boots you out, well, then suddenly you need to actually deal with one another. And capitalists, their strategy is essentially to enslave us, to impoverish us as much as possible. Yeah, Western economies are financialized. This is from Baked Potato. Yeah, it's no longer produces goods the world needs, but rather GDP is propped up by phony asset prices like stocks and housing market. They're also the largest middleman that buys cheap goods from China and turns around and marks the price by 5 times to their consumers. Yeah. Look how China and the East Asia tame inflation. They actually produce goods and usually achieves a surplus, and thus their currency doesn't get devalued. Well, occasionally the Chinese will devalue their currency on purpose because they understand that the money is not the point, right? Like this is something that I talk about a lot, right? I talk about it a lot. Is that we worship money. We see money as an end to itself. And we worship money. That if I have $100 billion, then I am rich. And it's meaningless, right? That the money itself is not really a thing. It's what you can get with the money. It's what the money produces. It's the assets. It's the services. It's the ability to mobilize labor, right? It's the ability to mobilize labor that has the real true power. And so but if you worship money in and of itself, if you think that just having a high dollar value is the goal, and it isn't about what assets can you create, what can you make, right? Then, well, what do you end up with? You end up with a high number in a bank account in a stagnant economy. You end up with a high number in a bank account where everybody's poor and nothing's happening. Because the entire point of a robust economy and a robust system is that everybody has access to goods, services, to the degree that it improves their quality of life. What's gotten so stupid in our society, right, is that we're caught on this treadmill of get more money, money, worship money, that we refuse to actually stop and go, wait a minute, we've got all these houses, we've got all these assets, we've got all this stuff already, it's already built, it's already made, it's already here, we don't need to build or make any more, we have it, right? Or if we do need to build and make any more, right, it's just to account for increased immigration, right? It's just to account for the failures of the capitalist death cult, who are willfully standing in front of us and saying, yeah, we totally forgot to plan. We have no planning capacity whatsoever. We literally opened up the borders to immigration and said, everybody come on down, but forgot to build housing. We're straight up admitting it to you, that we are incompetent idiots who cannot make a plan to save your life. And we're willing to admit that utter, total, grotesque incompetence because we don't want to admit our sinister malfeasance in hoarding empty housing and treating it like a currency, right? So we're willing to totally admit and capitulate on our inability to plan and our stupidity and the utter, complete and total failure of capitalism to produce even the most basic commodity, which is housing, right? In order to act as a cover for our demonic evil in keeping people homeless on the streets while we sit on empty houses, right? Like this is literally what's happening. This is straight up what's happening. That capitalism is such an overwhelming failure of a system that it's forced to capitulate. Which failure does it actually want to admit? And the failure that it's willing to admit in regards to the housing market is, oh yeah, we just don't plan. We just have no idea what we're doing. We're too stupid to understand that if you bring in 100 people, you better have housing for 100 people. Like, we're too dumb. And now we're in a major housing crisis. And is the capitalist death cult going, oh shit, we're in a housing crisis, build houses? No. Quite the opposite, in fact. What are they doing to people who are actually trying to build little houses and trying to do stuff? Oh, they're hitting them with injunctions and telling them to stop, right? Like, we are a dim-witted, stupid people actually listening to these capitalists and taking them seriously at all. And and this worship of money, right? Like, we could just be done with it. Like, here's an idea. Here's a crazy thought. Here's something that makes me the furthest left on the spectrum, probably on the internet, right? Because I actually have ideas and thoughts, not like other quote-unquote leftists who are just like, well, there's nothing we can do, there's plenty we can do. You know what we could do? We could take all the empty houses away from these losers and tell them to go fucking die, put homeless people in those houses, tell the people complaining about it to shut up, and then build a bunch more houses by creating a public bank, right, that's not beholden to these private psychopaths, giving out zero interest loans and saying, hey, build a bunch of housing. You'll be rich. Build a bunch of housing. Do it now. And it's owned by the public instead of these private losers. And while we're at it, we could even seize some of these privately held banks. And and then on top of all of that, you know what else we could do? We could integrate our education system into our agricultural system to make it so that in order to get an education, you have to do a modicum of labor in the food distribution and food creation system. And then guess what we could do? We could make food free for everybody. Whoa, imagine that. Imagine that if we just provided all of the labor as a passing of the torch from generation to generation, as an agreement, as a social agreement that we actually have with one another, that everyone just chips in a little modicum, a little bit of the labor that needs to be done in order to produce the food and produce and maintain the shelter and distribute the food, and then everybody just gets access to it. Whoa, what? Holy shit. You mean we could just do the thing and then have it? Whoa. John, planning is very communist. Yeah, that's why communist societies are successful, and that's why they're working, right? And the struggles that they have are from external forces most of the time, right? Yeah, Pierre is a landlord, invested in a real estate company. 1/3 of Liberal MPs are also landlords or real estate investors. Yeah, stop voting for landlords. Like, what do you think they're going to do? You think landlords are going to vote to reduce how much their properties are worth or how much they can gouge renters? No, they're never going to do that. Stop voting for landlords. Mr. Moon says, recent survey, 72% of Australians between 18 to 34 believe that they will never own their own home. Cool and normal. Yeah. A complete and total failed society, right? Like this failed society that does not work is obviously betraying itself to the highest possible order. And just watch what's going to happen. Watch what's going to happen to all of this stuff, right? These landlords, these detached psychos, right? What are they going to do? Because they're going to jack up the price as high as they possibly can. Right? And then who are they going to sell to? They're going to sell to what they'll call foreign investors, right? And this is going to be like Chinese billionaires, right? Like our entire housing market is going to get bought up by like Chinese and Indian billionaires who are just going to own huge swaths of our market because we don't have national fealty at all. There's no such thing as Canada. There's no such thing as America, right? You're only supposed to be loyal and patriotic if you're willing to go shoot someone. Right? If it's about feeding and clothing one another, then go fuck yourself. It's a free market. Go die. And they'll say that to you straight out. They'll say it to you straight out, like Jordan Peterson does, right? So and they keep crying about it. They keep doing article after article after article about it. That Peterson tells people to go kill themselves, and then that means that he has to go like read a book or something, and everybody's crying about it. It's wild. Yeah, there is one plan. Extract as much wealth as fast as you can. That's exactly what it is. Tinker writes, IMF study, fossil fuel subsidies surged to record $7 trillion last year. Yeah, they're trying to pull out as much fossil fuels as they possibly can. That's what it is. That they understand. Like, you've got to be kind of dumb to not see that there is a rising anxiety amongst the public about our inaction and inability to actually confront the climate crisis, that it's becoming quite explosive. Like, and I do mean explosive. Like, I think that very serious things are going to start happening. And that's only if you don't believe that the things that have already happened are not serious, right? And things are going to get more dramatic and more intense. And people are going to do more dramatic and more desperate things. DJ, good to see you, my man. I am doing well today. I'm a little tired. I did a lot of chores today, but that's really nice. It's really nice to do chores. There's something like, it's not just good for your living conditions, your material living conditions. It's good for your soul. It's like shaking the dust out of your consciousness. I find that every single time, one of the things that I'm really grappling with and I'm really acknowledging in myself is I let things build, like I don't want to clean my bathroom, for example, right? And I kind of just, I live by myself, so it's only myself that really needs to answer to it. And I just like put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. It takes 10 minutes to clean the bathroom. Literally fill up a bowl with hot water and soap and just like scrub everything down and you're done. Right? It's not hard to do. It takes literally 10 minutes, and I'll just put it off, and I'll put it off, and I'll put it off, and it'll just be something where I'll just be like, oh, and I'll agonize about it. And I'll spend hours and hours of my time just being like, oh, I should do this, and I can't do this, and oh my God. And then when I finally do it, I actually find that it's quite an emotional thing to do. It's actually really fascinating, right? Like, this is, I mentioned Peterson earlier, so this is the one thing that Peterson actually says that I think we can say is universally the truth, which is it's good to clean up your space, right? But there's something emotional about it. It's interesting. We don't actually think about it that way or discuss it that way. That like cleaning your room carries with it this like dealing with your existential self in a way. It's funny. It's weird, but it's good. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. Tinker says, cons and libs, nothing for free. Where's the money going to come from? It'll collapse the economy if we do that. I love this. Like, I love this. When these cons and libs were growing up, it's if you build it, they will come. There's just an intrinsic understanding that, oh, if you build it, people will come and use it, right? They literally made a movie where the tagline was, if you build it, they will come. And it's just like this total perfect articulation of the boomer ethos, right? Yeah, we just understand that, oh, like if you build a hot dog stand, they'll come. If you build a business, they'll come. If you build a highway, people will use it. They will come. So of course we're going to fund it. Of course we're going to do it because people will use it. And if people will use it, then more money will come in, right? And all of the studies show that that's the case. If you build transit stations, you get, for every dollar you put in, you get $3 back. If you fund the arts, for every dollar you put in, you get $3 back. If you fund this, if you build it, they will come. And the boomers for decades and decades and decades were like, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. And now that there's another generation of people who are being like, hey, we've got ideas and thoughts. We've got this kind of thing. Then suddenly it's, where's the money going to come from? How are you going to do it? What are you going to do? Well, what happened if you build it, they will come? What happened there? Right? And then to this statement, it'll collapse the economy if we do that. Yeah, that's the whole point, you dumbasses. That's the whole point. That if you fund the building of the automobile, that will collapse the horse and buggy economy. If you fund the building of mass transit systems, that'll collapse the car market. If you fund teleportation, that will collapse the rail system economy. Yeah, that's the whole fucking point, you dumbasses. That's the whole point of technology and building ideas and thoughts and creating new things. It's the entire reason we have research and development, you dumbasses. It's the whole reason, is so that we can destroy previous economies. Why else are we researching technology and trying to figure out how to do stuff if not to do away with old systems that are no longer beneficial? These guys that are like, if you do that, it'll collapse the economy. Good. Yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole idea. That's the whole goddamn idea. If Luke Skywalker shoots that rocket into the Death Star, it'll blow up. Yes. Yeah, we know. That's the whole idea. That's the whole point. Like the things that these people are saying are so dim-witted that it's gotten to the point now where, like, how do we even respond to this shit? How do we even say any more to these people? Yeah. Like, we fucking know. Like, we fucking know. Remember peak oil? Yeah. Peak oil's a good time, my man. We're already over the crest. We're on the way down now. Countries that are actually intelligent have already begun the transition in a serious way. You take a look at, like, Saudi Arabia is a really good example of this. Saudi Arabia, man, when I was a kid, I was like a little kid, like maybe 15. And I literally just said, solar panels in deserts. Just boom, boom. 1 + 1 = 2. Like, this is this easy. And everybody was just like, oh, we don't have the technology for that, and you can't do that. How are you going to pay for it? Oh, you can't do home run. It was all just naysaying bullshit. Well, what did Saudi Arabia do? Oh, they put a bunch of solar panels in the desert. Oh, fuck. Right? No, we don't have the technology for that, so why bother researching it or trying to research it or iterating on it or creating it? Like, yeah, but people did do that. It wasn't us. So we've fallen behind pretty badly, and what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to buy it from them. Right? We're going to put ourselves into debt to a whole bunch of people. And this is why you're now seeing this enormous push for nuclear. Right? You're seeing this enormous push for nuclear coming out of these dim-witted conservatives because they don't have any ideas or thoughts or plans, and they certainly don't plan. And so now they're in a panic because it's starting to dawn on them, I think. Whoa. You're okay, buddy. I think it is starting to dawn on some of these dimwits that, like, oh, shit, like, doing nothing and completely ignoring reality has consequences, and those consequences are actually going to be quite serious. Because what happens is that these climate change denying dimwits get into office, and then they actually do end up having a meeting with somebody who knows something about climate change. And that climate change person is like, if you do not do this, you will be responsible for dramatic things that happen. There are serious things that are going to come. Like we're talking about a collapse of the power grid. We're talking about massive famines. We're talking about water levels going up. This is a real serious thing that very serious organizations have said is going to occur, and you can't just do nothing. And you can see that's why the conservatives here in Ontario are suddenly like, yeah, we should build nuclear plants. We should build 20 nuclear plants, because they're realizing that their incompetence has cost us literally 40 years of development here in the province of Ontario. Like, our economy here in the province of Ontario is the same as Alabama's now because of Ford and his stupidity and his inability to understand basic things. Like 1 + 1 = 2 level shit. Like here's a guy who came into office while there were policies and plans in place in order to implement up to 700 climate change related programs, many of which were the launching pad for Ontario to get into the green economy and to build a new economy in order to make this green transition. And the very first thing that Ford did is he came in and he destroyed it, because he's too stupid to understand that was actually the future of Ontario. That and what was his plan? We'll sell it. Ontario is open for business. What we're going to do is exactly what Polyev is doing. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land, and that'll make our economy as good as Alabama's. That'll make our economy as good as Alabama's. We're a very, very dim-witted people. Like, it's extremely obvious how dim-witted we are. As soon as you take a step back from it and stop venerating it, as soon as you stop worshiping the grift, right? As soon as you stop venerating as soon as you stop venerating money, as soon as you stop venerating yourself, as soon as you stop venerating the system, right? You realize very quickly, like, oh, this is all very dumb. Like, this is all very, very dumb. There's so many things that we could be doing. And this is the thing that I keep saying over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There are so many fucking things that we could actually do. There are so many things that we could actually do. That when you start talking about solutions for climate change, conservatives immediately want to start being like, you're gonna take away my freedoms. Like, I'm literally talking about turn off the lights at Times Square. Like, straight up. Hey, you know all those lights that are on the interstate highway when you're driving down the interstate highway? What if, crazy thought, we turned out like half of them, right? Like what if we dimmed the lights even? Like just like real basic kindergarten level, like, lights take energy to keep on. The lights in Times Square, that, like, there are signs on Times Square that are on right now to tell us about McDonald's. Turn that shit off. Like, turn that shit off. Like, these are extremely basic things that we could absolutely be moving towards and we could absolutely be doing. And instead of doing any of that kind of stuff, we get mired. And my absolute favorite part of the conversation that's happened, that's obviously happening in the society, that the wealthy definitely want us to do is, well, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? You who are polluting 0.000000000001% of the pollution, while I produce 40% of the pollution. What are you doing, yuckles? This gaslighting that they're fucking inflicting on us, so that we'll all just start fighting amongst one another and start trying to one-up one another about how much holier than thou we all are of one another, instead of looking at the two people who are producing 40% of the pollution. Like, it's gaslighting to the highest extreme, and we've just fallen for it. Like, there are well-meaning people out there. There are people out in the conversation right now, well-meaning, nice people who are walking around being like, well, we got to reduce our own individual pollution. You know, what we got to do is we got to get out there and we got to make sure we use reusable bags, and I cycle, and I'm eating less meat, and I'm encouraging everybody else to eat less meat too. You know, we all got to get out there and we all got to do our best. And that's how we're going to tackle this thing, is by all individualizing our individualism, and then the individualization will individualize itself, and then the individuals will individualize their individualization. Meanwhile, there's literally like 10 people up on a hill fucking shooting rockets at space, taking off in super yachts and helicopters. Fucking the Kardashians are taking 10-minute flights in private jets and shit like this, and we're all just like, that's a normal thing. That they earned it. They earned it is what they did there. That's right. They earned the ability to produce 40% of our pollution. That's right. But make sure you eat less meat. It's important. Like, at what point do we get to say this is just gaslighting? This is just gaslighting. Like, there are very obvious and clear things that we could be doing. We could be saying straight out, hey, there's a pollution cap. And what we could do is we could take the average pollution that an average citizen produces and increase it by a factor of 10 and say that's the line you have to cross before we put you in jail, right? So 99.9% of the society will never cross this threshold, ever. And then the one billionaire that does, we put him in prison. How about that? How's that for a thought? Except the whole system is owned by the billionaire, right? He owns it, so he's never going to allow that to happen. Because this is a normal society run by normal people, right? Speaking of the normal society that's run by normal people, right? This is from a video. I'm not going to play the video, but we are officially in a silent depression. For those of you who might be on the Biden train, the economy's doing great. The economy's doing great for billions for billionaires right now. In the 1930s, right, versus 2023. In the 1930s, average housing price $3,900. That was 3 times someone's average income, which was $1,300. Right? Housing in 2023, it's such a big number I don't even know how to say it. $436,000, which is 8 times the average income. So housing costs have doubled since the Great Depression. Like I can't really articulate how disastrous this situation is for people. We are in a situation, we are in an economic situation that is actually worse than the Great Depression. Average car costs have gone up by almost double, from 46% to 85%. Average rent has gone from 16% of income to 42%. Over double. Like, how is this anything short of a total and utter catastrophe? How is this anything short of a situation where the entire society is in a free fall collapse and we're all just totally bickering? Yeah. And the average house in my country, which is Canada, is $614,000, even worse than America. Yeah. Silverlight wants to debate the difference between LED lights and incandescent lights. Look, my man, I'm using it as an example for things that are simple to do. Like, I feel like there's a million things that are like this. And it's just not happening. Like, it's straight up, it's just not happening. And yes, I feel like we are at a point where we should be saying, like, if we're willing to say to fucking vegans who are eating no meat, well, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? Like, you know what we could do? We could shut off the lights on the Prime Minister's house, is what we could do. You know what we could do is we could absolutely imprison ExxonMobil executives. That's what we could do. Yeah, you want to talk about a real thing that we could actually do? We could go to the houses of Exxon executives, pick them up and put them in jail cells. There you go. There's a real thing that we could actually do, right? OAS Music writes for the first time with this beautiful comment. You guys got to hear this comment. This is a beautiful comment. Listen to this. Not gonna lie, with the title, I thought you were a chud at first. Thank you, OAS Music. Right? Thank you, my man. I appreciate it. The decline of Western civilization thing. That's right. That's right. I am, in fact, OAS Music, not a chud. No, I am not a chud. I'm not 100% sure what a chud is, but I can tell you that it's not me. Well, I appreciate your comment, OAS Music, and I appreciate the truth that that while you may have thought at one point that I was a chud, I have convinced you otherwise. Oh, I see where you're coming from, right? Commenting on the decline of Western civilization. So you were expecting to come in here and have me be like, the trans people with their pronouns are coming in here and they're making things worse for us normies. Right? That's sort of what you were expecting, right? That it's this liberal media and it's woke agenda that's making us have this decline of Western civilization. We gotta take things back from these liberals and make sure we sell ourselves as fast as possible to capitalists. That if we sell ourselves to capitalists as fast as possible, that's going to solve all our problems. Absolutely. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord Jesus Christ. Is that what you were sort of expecting? OAS Music is like, no, yeah, I definitely expected that. I'm just glad I was wrong. Perfect. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, guys. Hit the bells, hit the whistles, do all this stuff. I've got a Patreon in the description. Please consider donating. It's been a while since somebody has donated, so it'd be really lovely if somebody did donate. But even more importantly than that, because I do feel like a televangelist asking for money, tell people I exist. That's the more important thing. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors, tell your kids, tell your wives, tell everybody, tell the world the Canadian economy exists and that he is not a chud. Yeah, the username would have been conflicting if I said that. Yeah, that would have definitely thrown things off. It's like, that doesn't sound like something the communists would say. Yep. Well, I am a complex individual, OAS Music, you will find. Just gonna throw that light on, get some more light on my beautiful, gorgeous face. I do feel like a televangelist every single time I ask for money. I just feel like I'm feeling the Spirit move through me today. Today I'm feeling that there's somebody out there with the name Evelyn. Evelyn, if you are out there in the world today and you're feeling the Spirit of Jesus Christ move through you, make sure you grab onto that feeling, Evelyn, and listen to the Spirit as it tells you to take out that checkbook, Evelyn, and write down the name of the address you see below. And put into that amount box as much as you feel like you want to give to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and you send that on down, praise and glory, hallelujah, Evelyn. Thank you so much for your contribution today, Evelyn, and I just know that you're contributing today to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Praise and hallelujah, right? OAS Music's like, you do that accent too well. Suspicious. I grew up around the televangelists, man. I know all about them. I feel like I've been doing that impression since I was a little kid. I've been saying it for years, guys. I would I would be way more successful if I was a cult leader. If this was a cult, if what I was trying to do here was a cult, I think I would make a lot more money. Ooh, a chud is a slur that Russians have for Finnish people. It also means cannibal human underground dweller, allegedly. Weird. Time to go to the live in the woods and become survivalists. Yeah. Let's do it. All right, before we do that, here's some articles from The Guardian, right? Poor people surviving, not living, as UK social contract collapses, says report. This is what's coming for us, you guys. This is what our leaders have in plan for us. This is what their plan is for us. The collapses of the UK's social contract is leaving millions of low-income families surviving, not living, and forced to endure unacceptable levels of poverty, according to an independent cross-party report. The Poverty Strategy Commission, which seeks to forge a new national political consensus on reducing poverty, and which includes former ministers from the three main parties, say poverty levels are too high and hardship is becoming more extreme. It warns a more of the same approach to poverty in the future will fail. But that's only if you think failure means everyone's having a fine time. Or a bad time, I should say. If your goal is to extract as much wealth as possible and increase the suffering of people because it gets you hard, then everything's going just fine. It estimates the broad annual cost of significantly reducing poverty in the UK at $36 billion, equivalent to £6,000 a year for 6 million families in poverty. A figure reached through a combination of benefits and wage increases and investments to lower housing and energy costs and improved health services. The interim report of the Commission, published on Tuesday, seeks to put poverty reduction back on the party political agenda before the next general election. It is concerned at the lack of urgency from the two main parties over the scale and nature of poverty and society's failure to offer adequate protection to its poorest. It's because all the parties operate on the benefit of the rich, right? They operate for the benefit of the rich. They don't operate for you, right? In fact, their system is to extract as much wealth as they possibly can from you and then abandon you on behalf of the billionaire class. Traster, I'm going to answer that question in a second. The report says not only have overall relative poverty rates barely budged at between 21% and 24% after the 2 decades, but even in areas where some progress was made, such as reducing pensioners and single-parent poverty, they have started to go into reverse. Thank you very much, Mikhail. I appreciate that donation, my man. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate it, my man. It makes me feel good. And that's the long and short of it. Like the money part of it, great. But it makes me feel good that you're putting skin in the game like that, man. I really do appreciate it. It also highlights the rise of the proportion of people in poverty experiencing deep poverty, measured at least 50% below the poverty line. It says nearly a third, 31% of those officially in hardship are in deep poverty and struggling to buy sufficient food, energy, and clothes, pay rent, and meet other everyday bills. While the government often implies that there is a social contract between state and citizen, the Commission says in practice, this does not exist, noting that the social security system routinely fails to protect people from poverty, even when they are working, are unable to work through disability, or are pensioners. Its interim recommendations include a 5% uplift in benefits and wages for people in poverty, outside any inflation increases, although it says poverty cannot be tackled by raising incomes alone, and highlights housing and childcare costs, and additional costs of disability and energy and travel costs as areas to be addressed, which they won't be addressed because we're run by a group of psychopaths, right? It's a psychopathic death cult whose interest is to extract as much wealth from us as possible and increase our suffering because it gets them off. The chair of the commission, Lady Philippa Stroud, is a Tory peer and former political advisor to Ian Duncan Smith when he was welfare secretary between 2010 and 2016. Wow, he didn't get anything done now, but now he's going to get something done. She put the commission together to try and forge a new political momentum for tackling poverty, an attempt to engineer broad agreement over how it should be done. You'll never find agreement from the billionaire class. They literally use our children as like pedophile cultists in like Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, right? That's amazing. Bazooka Karak? Bazooka Iraq. Yeah, very, 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 very clever. You guys are effed. Why are they doing that? I don't know what your comment's about, bud. Maybe try and be beautiful, eh? Maybe try to contribute. She said poverty in the UK is too high and the experiences of many people in poverty are now getting worse. Governments of all colors have worked hard to change that picture, but as society we have failed to make significant progress, which is on purpose. The commission, which has been meeting for 18 months, includes the Conservative MP and former Work and Pension Secretary Stephen Crabb, former Liberal Democrat MP and Coalition Minister David Law, the Labour MP and former Treasury Minister Stephen Tues, think tanks from left and right, charities including the Trussell Trust Food Bank Network, and academic experts are also members. This is all to give the illusion that they give a shit. They didn't do anything when they had power, and now that they don't have any power, what are they doing? They're all getting together to be like, oh no, we very much actually seriously care about this thing that we're not actually going to do anything about. That's what this is. That's what this all is. This is all to give the illusion of giving a fuck, so that maybe you'll be like, wow, they actually do give a fuck. Oh, they actually do care. You know what? If they actually do care, if they're willing to get together and say out loud that they acknowledge the existence of poverty, then maybe I won't gather my friends and go to their houses. Right? Maybe I won't actually gather my friends and go to the Parliament building. Maybe I won't actually come together in a massive protest and overthrow the system. Maybe I won't actually organize in serious ways outside of the electoral system in order to absolutely dismantle this thing. Because they actually care, you guys. They actually real care. You know, we're really coming together to try to work for these poors and actually really care about them as we extract as much wealth as we possibly. This is unsustainable. Yeah, it's unsustainable, which is why we're funding another Jeffrey Epstein pedophile island with the money we extract from you. Because we know it's unsustainable, so when it collapses, we'll just go there. Yeah, that's great. It's a ruse. Like, it's a ruse. These people have no moral fiber. They have no conscience. They've got no soul, right? They don't give a fuck about you at all. And now what are they doing? They're all getting together in the same room to talk about how much they care about it, to convince you to not actually overthrow the thing. That's the entire point, right? So that you'll fall for this, so you'll just continue being gullible rubes, continue believing that the people who've been beating the shit out of you are actually suddenly going to have a come to Jesus moment and be like, oh, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way to live than this. There's got to be a better way that we can actually help these poor people that we have all been actively impoverishing on purpose out loud. We've been saying it constantly. Like, these people have been saying out loud in front of you constantly, repeatedly, over and over and over again to go fuck yourselves. But now that there's the threat you might show up at their places of work and cause them real problems, well, now we really care, and we're putting together a commission. And we're going to publish an article in The Guardian, and everybody will see it and then definitely not show up at our places to cause us real problems. And if they do, we can be like, but I'm on your side. Oh, really? Didn't you read that article in the Guardian? You read that article in the Guardian, right? I know that I was in office for 10 years and voted to fuck you over for 10 years straight, and that the people who came in after just upheld the legislation that I put in power so that I could personally be rich. But you read that article in the Guardian. I really do care about you. Fuck these people. Fuck every single one of these people. Who are these people's names? David Laws. Fuck you, David Laws. Stephen Tues, go get fucked. Think tanks from left and right, charities, and the Trussell Food Bank. Fuck all of you. Fuck each and every one of you. That if you were serious organizations that were actually serious about addressing the seriousness of poverty, you know what you would be saying? I know what I would be saying if I was in Canada. Yeah, hey, here's David Thompson's apartment number. Here's his address, right? Here's his schedule. Right? We should all be gathering constantly. Like if you're these wealthy MPs and ministers and all this kind of stuff, how about you start hiring vans to bring people to Parliament buildings to actually protest and do something serious? No, just going to publish an article in the Guardian and hope it blows over. Yeah, that's what you're doing. Like they have always done, like they always do. It's all a grift. It's all a grift completely. That stuff like this is designed to make you go, oh, somebody's doing something. They're not. They're definitely not. I saw this happen under the last mayor, John Tory, of this city, right? That he put in a Toronto poverty reduction strategy. We're all going to come together, all these MPs. What we're going to do is we're going to come together. We're going to put in the Toronto poverty reduction strategy. We're all coming together. We're talking to people across the entire spectrum. Homelessness advocates, shelter advocates, doctors, lawyers, nurses, engineers, MPs, the very serious people in the society who are very definitely serious. And we're going to put in a poverty reduction. It gets put in, passed unanimously. Unanimous support. Poverty went up because they don't give a fuck at all. They don't care even a tiny fucking little bit. They only care that you think they care. That is it. Exclusively the truth. And as long as you keep reading stuff like this and falling for this shit like a bunch of gullible rubes, they're going to keep doing it because it keeps working. It's like how Disney keeps making shitty movies because you keep watching them. Like, it's the same fucking thing. And even if you want to believe that these people, oh, they are actually interested, it's tough to govern. Well, what they've been doing is governing on false ideas that suck, and they need to get rid of them. We need to throw these people in the dustbin of history and replace them with literally people who wear shoes on their heads at this point. Like, there's a fellow that runs for office in Europe. I forget which country in Europe. He literally shows up to debates. Got a big bushy beard, right? He literally shows up to debates wearing a literal fucking boot on his head. Vote for that guy. Vote for the guy that has a boot on his head. You'd be better off. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ, man. Like, I'm starting to get really, like, because I'm seeing this sort of wave, this liberal wave, coming through the society and coming through our consciousness and coming through what we're doing, right? I'm seeing this liberal wave flow through where all these liberals are actually saying like, oh, but we actually do need to care. Well, you know how you care? By doing things, right? This is why you got to do things. Meanwhile, hey guys, did you know the climate crisis? 11,000 scientists warn of untold suffering. Chinese propaganda is what this is. This here is just some Chinese propaganda sending out so that the Chinese can keep selling us things we don't need. So this is some George Soros propaganda right here. Yeah, liberal filth will give you MAID as an option to poverty and mental illness. That's exactly their strategy. I think almost every municipality in Ontario has had a poverty reduction strategy. Yeah, but they don't actually care. They care that you think they care. That's the only thing they care about. The world's people face untold suffering due to the climate crisis unless there are major transformations to global society, according to a stark warning for more than 100,000 scientists. Because this has worked before, right? A bunch of scientists have got together and said, hey, we're going to face real consequences for this shit if we don't do something. And the world's governments have all been like, we got to do something. 11,000 scientists, eh? If 11,000 people started just showing up at the White House, do you think that would cause problems? Do you think things could actually get started to happen if 11,000 people showed up at the White House? We declare clearly and unequivocally that planet Earth is facing a climate emergency. Yeah, the liberals said this 10 years ago. To secure a sustainable future, we must change how we live. This entails major transformations in the ways our global society functions and interacts with the natural ecosystems. This sounds like a Justin Trudeau speech, right? We declare clearly and unequivocally that planet Earth is facing a climate emergency. To secure a sustainable future, we must change how we live. This entails major transformations in the way our global society functions and interacts with natural ecosystems. We're so far beyond this. Like we are. We're so far behind this. It's crazy how far behind this we actually are. Or how far beyond this we actually are. Right? Meanwhile, Freeland, we need more women in mining jobs. That's right. There is no time to lose. They said 20 years ago already. I've seen this. The climate crisis has arrived, and it's accelerating faster than most scientists expected. It is more severe than anticipated, threatening natural ecosystems and the fate of humanity. You know what the secret to, I think, dealing with all this is to stop thinking humanity matters so fucking much. Really? Like, if we can't even stop this shit from happening, if we are so dim-witted and incapable of preventing this from happening, then maybe we shouldn't be here, right? Maybe this whole humanity thing it's a nice idea, a nice thought, right? Protogenesis, like the first time that the Earth has created a species like us to be able to communicate with one another and actually have a deeper understanding of the universe, right? To actually be able to connect to the source power and then articulate that source power into the universe and to have it understood by other aspects of the creative force of the universe. Like we're the first sort of iteration of it, but even though we don't like doing it and we hate to talk about it, and the people who do talk about it are like, wow, that's a bunch of woo. That's a bunch of woo. Oh, that's a bunch of crazy nonsense. The fact that we are like literally spiritual quantum beings walking around talking to one another about how crazy this existence is that we refuse to do anything about, maybe we deserve it. You know, maybe there just comes a point where we could just be like, yeah, what's with these fucking humans? Who gives a fuck, right? We're very dim-witted people. The statement is published in the journal Bioscience on the 40th anniversary of the first World Climate Conference. So 40 years they've been doing this. 40 years they've been like, climate change is a serious thing that we should care about. And what has the political system managed to accomplish? The statement was a collaboration of dozens of scientists and endorsed by 11,000 from 153 nations. The scientists say the urgent changes needed to include ending population growth, leaving fossil fuels in the ground, halting forest destruction, and slashing meat eating. Professor William Ripple of Oregon State University and the lead author of the statement said he was driven to initiate it by the increase in extreme weather he was seeing. A key aim of the warning set out to a full range of vital sign indicators of the causes and effects of climate breakdown, rather than only carbon emissions and surface temperature rise. World population, air transport, meat production. Encouraging signs. Ooh, divestment. Divestment from fossil fuels. Yeah, trillions of assets divested from fossil fuels. Good. Until I see this line that says ExxonMobil executives in prison, I don't think that this is serious. Carbon pricing. Oh, very good. Yeah, taxes on farmers. That's wonderful. And then the fertility rate is just like... A broader set of indicators should be monitored, including human population growth, meat consumption, tree cover loss, energy consumption, fossil fuel subsidies, which have only gone up, and annual economic losses to extreme weather events. Other profoundly troubling signs from human activities selected by the scientists include booming air passenger numbers and world GDP growth. The climate crisis is closely linked to excessive consumption of the wealthy lifestyle, they said. Like literally, we are destroying ourselves. Like we're straight up destroying ourselves, so that we can like have burgers and shit. Yeah, the world is burning around us. We still go to work every day. I know, right? Super, super wild. Like it's that to me. Like the best advice that I can give anybody is do the absolute barest minimum that you can get away with while still managing to pay your rent and your bills. Learn to accept less, right? Because that's what's going to happen. Just learn to have less. Like this is what I've done in my life. Have less space. Don't worry about the house, the car, all that kind of Bugatti shit, right? You need to sell women to get a Bugatti, right? Don't worry about any of that shit. And then once you get these sort of basic things put in place, where you're living this kind of minimalist lifestyle, where your ambitions are literally to just make it through life, right? Then just fucking enjoy yourself. That's it. Like, once you kind of set these expectations, right, you're going to find, and what I have found in my life is, once I got through the angst of like, I'm never going to have the house and the car, and I'm going to be like, once I got through all that angst, I'm just like, I don't care what any of these idiots think, because they're too stupid to realize that we're destroying the future for our own children. I'm just going to have as much fun as I possibly can. That's it. I'm just going to enjoy my life as much as I possibly can, because it's my life, right? It's now or never. I don't want to live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive, because it's my life. This one goes to the broken-hearted. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to look at the graphs and know things are going wrong, said Newsom. But it's not too late. The scientists identify some encouraging signs, including decreasing global birth rates. I love that they are always front-loading this, eh? It's always about getting rid of poor people. We got to get rid of these poors. Less poor people. Decrease those birth rates of the poors. Increasing solar and wind power and fossil fuel divestment. Rates of forest destruction in the Amazon had also been falling until a recent increase under new president Jair Bolsonaro. Yeah, it turns out that performing a legislative coup against a socialist government is a bad idea. Yeah, it's a bad idea to let the CIA exist. They set out a series of urgently needed actions. Use energy far more efficiently and apply strong carbon taxes to cut fossil fuel use. Like, even these guys who are like, we're very concerned, we are the scientists, are not actually saying incarcerate people for disinformation campaigns. Like literally take ExxonMobil executives and put them in jail cells and forget where you put them. Just put them there and leave them there and just forget about it. Like even like, we're so gulled, we're so catastrophically cowardly that even in the face of a looming climate change apocalypse, we're unwilling to actually look at the villains, the dark narcissists and the psychopaths in the society that are obviously profiteering off of the suffering that they're creating, and say, yeah, you should go to jail. Like, just absolutely brutal. End the destruction of nature and restore forests and mangroves to absorb CO2. Eat mostly plants and less meat. Reduce food waste. Shift economic goals away from GDP growth. That's just a good idea generally. Like, if you want to have a real economy, you don't need to be worried about GDP growth, right? You know how you increase your GDP? You let billionaires trade houses with one another. There you go. Your GDP's through the roof. Oh, you're trading art pieces with one another. Your GDP's through the roof, right? You can just manufacture GDP. It's not useful. Like, it's a really, really stupid way to actually measure how strong your economy is actually going. So stupid that the person that invented GDP said outright, do not use this as a measurement, right? Like, it's useful to have as a measurement on as like a tiny way to observe the economy, but don't use this as the basis of how you observe the economy. And what have we done? Well, the GDP growth has gone up, so good. That's it. Like, it's very dumb. Yeah. Bring in 1 million slaves per year, GDP through the roof, liberal plan. Yeah, that does seem to be their plan. The good news is that such transformative change with social and economic justice for all promises far greater human well-being than does business as usual, the scientists say. The recent surge of concern was encouraging, they added, from the global school strikes to lawsuits against polluters, and some nations and businesses starting to respond. A warning of the dangers of pollution and a looming mass extinction of wildlife on Earth, also led by Ripple, was published in 2017. It was supported by more than 15,000 scientists and read out in parliaments from Canada to Israel. It came 25 years after the original world scientists' warning to humanity in 1992, which said a great change in our stewardship of the earth and the life on it is required if vast human misery is to be avoided. Yeah, but they don't want to avoid it. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing I think these guys are missing. Like, we are dealing with people who literally were maintaining like a child pedophile cult on a secret island under Jeffrey Epstein. These people don't give a shit about our happiness. Like, they don't care at all. As long as it's not their buildings burning down, right? As long as they are the ones that are fine. They don't give a fuck at all. And I don't know what it's going to take before people start actually thinking this way and start actually realizing that the systems have completely abandoned you. Like, utterly, totally, completely, no one's coming to save you, right? Start talking to your neighbors. Start learning the names of your neighbors. Start learning the people in your community, because those are the people who you're going to rely on, and that's it exclusively. Like, I don't know why we're tolerating these total failed candidates and business owners and entrepreneurs, these complete failures, who I don't know why we're actually listening to a single thing they have to say. The free market will decide to destroy you. And we just keep going along with it. Everything's normal. We just keep going to work, right? Everything's totally fine. We just keep watching them digitize our currency. There's something that we should definitely not do. You want to think about something about, hey, what could we do in order to cut down our fossil fuel usage? Maybe creating digital currencies is a dumb fuck idea. Huh? How about that? Opinion on climate activists slashing SUV tires, not even close. Blow that shit up. Like, stop with this baby shit. Like, it's over. Like, it's over, right? Stop throwing paint on paintings. Stop slashing tires like you're 14-year-olds, right? Like, it's time for genuine and serious confrontations with these people. Like, if it makes you feel better, I guess. But, like, there's no, like, this is the thing that's going to get me pulled off these platforms, saying this. But, like, if they're not going to do anything about this climate crisis, right? If they're not going to do anything about this climate crisis, then there are no laws. You understand? Like, this is the thing that will get me pulled off these platforms, but it's absolutely and fundamentally the truth. And it needs to be said. And it should be said a lot, repeatedly, over and over and over again. This should become this should become the major talking point, especially coming out of the left. That if the system is not going to respond rationally to this climate crisis, there are no laws, and you do not need to obey anyone's authority. You don't need to pay attention to police. You don't need to pay attention to judges. You don't need to pay attention to lawyers. You don't need to pay attention to elected officials. You don't need to pay attention to military personnel. There is no such thing as a law if they are not going to respond to this climate crisis. The Constitution is pointless. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms is pointless. The legal system is pointless. The entire system is utterly pointless if it is not going to respond rationally to this climate crisis. You do not need to follow their laws, ever, under any circumstances. The only reason you should ever even consider their laws is because of the threat of violence that they will inflict against you if you act against their threats. And that's all these things are now. And until they start responding rationally to this climate crisis, there are no laws you are required to follow. So slashing SUV tires. I mean, okay, great. Like if I guess if I was a 14-year-old, I would think I was like a big tough person, I suppose. I'd be really thinking I've done something serious. You know, if I was 14. And of course the solution, right? The solution to people like me saying that kind of thing is not to pull me off the airwaves, which they'll do, right? Because they're cowards. It's to start responding rationally to the climate crisis. Start incarcerating fossil fuel executives. Start incarcerating politicians who have actually spread propaganda into the system. The Koch brothers, one of them's dead, thankfully. The other one it literally has admitted in front of us in public, has confessed openly that he funded disinformation campaigns. Why is he not in jail? Why have his assets not been stripped? Why is he still allowed to be a public figure walking around as he actively operates to deceive people using his wealth and prestige in order to do that? Oh, but my free speech, that's right. Because good speech beats bad speech, that's right. Right. Like, we absolutely 100% deserve the shitstorm that's coming our way. We absolutely 100% deserve it. We have earned it. We've worked really, really hard for it. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we get blindsided as hard as possible by this shit, right? And millions and millions and millions of people are going to get utterly, utterly blindsided by this shit. That when it starts to actually affect their lives in big and serious ways, it's going to be so dramatic and so serious that they're going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and they won't know what to do. And when that shit happens, it's going to straight up be fascist town. It's going to straight up just be some neo-fascist who seizes power, probably in a military coup, probably backed by the CIA, right? Which is what they've done all the time, constantly, throughout the globe, their entire existence, right? What do you think they're doing? They're training for how to do it at home. And when they do it, right, are we all going to stand up and be like, no, we're all going to bend the head and bend the knee because we'll be terrified, right? Because we'll be terrified. Like, the reason why the CIA uses terrorism is because it works. The reason why they're the largest terrorist organization on the planet is because it works. And when this climate stuff starts to come at us in a much more serious way, when it's no longer an existential, an idea of a threat, but a real threat, when it's really actually happening right in front of you, this society is going to take a hard right turn like you've never fucking seen before. Like, I'm talking like Warhammer 40k Imperium of Man shit. You can already see it amongst the Trump cultists, right? Some of the shit that these guys make, some of the shit that these guys do, some of the shit these guys say, it's like Imperium of Man shit. It's like the great God Emperor shit. And we're all just like, what a normal society we are. What a normal people. So we're going to go through some like absolutely crazy nutty shit. And so my advice to each and every one of you, expect less and just try to fucking enjoy yourself. Right? There's no rules. There's no goddamn rules to any of this. You are the expert of your life. You know what's going on in your own life. You know what you want to do. You know what you want to accomplish. Right? So try to have some giggles. Right? Try to have some laughs. Try to enjoy yourself. Try to get laid. Get drunk. Get high. Have sex. Watch porn. Do anything you like. As long as it doesn't interfere negatively directly with somebody. Right? Like, as long as you're not, like, getting off on beating the shit out of people or whatever. But, like, at this stage in the game, like, there's no fucking rules to any of this. Our society has declared that we are going to eliminate ourselves so that numbers go up on a screen. We're literally sacrificing the survival of the human species on a beautiful rock that spawned us in the first place and would be perfectly capable of healing us if we just allowed it to happen, right? If we just stopped polluting, the earth would just heal itself because that's what it's always done and that's what it's capable of doing. Like, this is the thing that blows my face off. This is the thing that blows my absolute face off, is that we're so arrogant. We're so absolutely arrogant that we're just genuinely sitting here being like, we got to find a solution to this problem. Did you guys know that the earth created itself to be a garden? Did you know that? Did you know that the earth created itself? That we are not responsible for the creation of the earth. We had nothing to do with it. That we came into a garden that we're destroying, right? That we came into a garden that was already prepared for us, right? Like, that's the whole fucking thing, right? The earth is more than capable of healing itself. And if we actually wised up, which we won't, but if we actually did wise up, what we would see is the earth healing itself. That's what we would see. And it would happen really fast. It would happen a lot faster than you think. Right? That, like, this is a regenerative system. It's perfectly capable of regenerating itself. And how do I know? Because it literally created itself. Like, what are you talking about? The idea that we need to invent something, that we need to create something, that we need to sell something, that we need more carbon capture devices, that we need to do stuff. You know what we need to do? No, we need to fuck off. We need to slag off. You know what we actually need to do? We need to grow up. Big ask for this population. Grow up. Take your toys. Put them in the toy box. Stop polluting. Clean up your environment. Like, all of these losers, all of these Jordan Peterson losers, love to walk around saying, clean up your room, while literally shitting where they eat. How about stop polluting your environment for 30 seconds? How about just stop driving around in your World War II sized fucking trucks? How about stop going out with your goddamn boats and your yachts and your ski-doos and your sea-doos and your dumbass toys? How about you just stay the fuck home for a minute? How about that? How about you just sit at home and deal with your family that you hate? And stop going to the job that you despise. Literally just chill the fuck out. Can't be done. Can't be done. And so my advice, 100%, Generation Y me. Yeah, John speaking my language, 10 out of 10 advice. Just enjoy yourself. Like, just do your best. Just enjoy yourself. The psychopaths have control of things, and they're not going to let go. And unless we're actually willing to confront them, which we're not, like, this is the great lie of, like, The Bug's Life, right? Like, the movie The Bug's Life. Like, literally what happened in A Bug's Life is one of the little bugs stood up and went, wait a minute, we outnumber these guys. We should just show up at their places and throw them out. And then they all did it. They were all just like, oh yeah, good point. Let's just go do that. And they did it, and it happened. Right? It happened in like 3 scenes. It was very fast. Right? How's that shit going? That for A Bug's Life to be accurate, there needed to be like 5 hours worth of all the bugs going, I don't know, well, I guess we can, well, what are you doing to help? You know? Tinker writes, we are not part of the solution. The earth doesn't need us. We are the scum of the earth, literally. Like, but this is what's so annoying, Tinker, right? I don't view humans as the scum of the earth, right? Like, we are, each one of us is the earth attempting to articulate itself. It's an attempt by the earth and by the universe, if you like, to put itself on this path of self-discovery in order to understand itself. That we are, each of us, the life source of the universe, if you like it, like to say it that way, or to put it in Christian terms, we are God attempting to manifest itself into this reality. That's what we are. That we are all collectively getting around and getting and we are collectively attempting to articulate something deeper than ourselves in order to manifest something larger. Karl Marxman writes, I don't know if it's reasonable to ascribe consciousness to all of existence. Why? Are you conscious, Karl? So if you're conscious, and I'm conscious, and everybody here is conscious, right? Well, then that means that the universe is at least as conscious as each one of us, right? Like, it's the system that generated us. It's the system by which we are here and that we are alive. And if we are to ascribe consciousness to ourselves, right, then to strip it from the force that creates and sustains us, to me, seems quite odd. Tinker writes, yes, we are. As a collective, we are scum. Tell me which other species has done the damage to other species or an entire planet. In cap locks, no less. We are scum. Say it, please. I can't, Tinker. I can't. And I think the reason why I can't, Tinker, is that it's because I think that we all have... There's an equality... we are equally valid with one another. That all life and all life forms have equality in terms of their validity on this planet and on this plane. Like, we're dumb, obviously. Like, we're pretty dumb. But we've been dumber. Like, this is the thing that still gives me a glimmering sense of hope. Is that we've been dumber. The dumbness is not as high of a scale. Like, the stakes are higher now, right? Like, this, we haven't had this much technology before, so the stakes are much higher. Our dumbness has not had the capacity to blow up in our faces so catastrophically, right? But we've been dumber than this. Publicly crucifying people is stupid. That's a dumb thing to do, right? You got to be a real dumb fuck society to think that that's a good way to operate. And we definitely did that before. Right? Like, we used to take people who owed debts and put them in prison and say, you're going to stay in prison until you pay that debt. Well, I think there's a problem with that thinking, isn't there? Right? That's a dumb fuck way to think. And don't get me wrong, we're definitely a dumb fuck people. Like, we're definitely doing something really stupid right now. Right? Karl Marxman, on the consciousness argument, you're making a categorical error. Just because one thing that arose from the universe has consciousness doesn't mean that everything that arose from it does. But that's not my claim. Like, my claim is that if you have consciousness, then the universe is as conscious as you are. By definition. And that's not a categorical error to say so. It's essentially a tautology. Right? That if you have consciousness, so too must the universe, to the degree that you have consciousness. And it doesn't take leaps of logic to put together a theory that says, if you and I have consciousness, then the universe must be as conscious as you and I. And if you and Mr. Moon and Grinning Guys and Tinker and McHale and Milo, right, all have consciousness, then the universe must be as conscious as all of us. And if everybody in this city has consciousness, and if everybody on the planet has consciousness, and if every dog and deer and bee and dolphin has consciousness, well, then the universe is as conscious as all of that. We can have an interesting conversation about the nature of that consciousness and what we and the theories of and the ideas and the thoughts behind what the nature of it might actually be. But I don't think that we can deny the existence of such a consciousness. That the universe must be conscious. By definition, it must be. Whether or not it is its own independent consciousness, whether if we get together and begin to operate collectively, a collective consciousness can arise that has itself its own independence, these are other conversations. But as a starting point, I think it is a literal tautology, a straight up one-to-one to say that the universe has a consciousness, because it must have a consciousness. So long as we say, I am conscious, so too must the universe, by definition. And there have actually been studies on this. The CIA, if you can believe this, the CIA has done studies on collective consciousness, because the CIA is big into mental manipulation, right? It wants to manipulate people. It wants to mind control people, because the CIA is a demonic organization that is evil, right? It's the largest terrorist organization that exists on the planet. And so it has done studies on collective consciousness, because its goal is to manipulate us using the subconscious and using the collective consciousness. That's its goal. And the big reason why it shouldn't exist as an organization. Because the idea that a group of fucking dumb monkeys are going to be able to manipulate this for the benefit of the other dumb monkeys is a stupid idea. But they're doing it anyway, because they're the fucking CIA. And their studies concluded that there is such a thing as a collective consciousness. That when people get together and focus on a singular objective, it can have an impact on the rest of the people in the society. One of the things that have really stuck for me from these studies is they make the claim that a group of people meditating for half an hour a day reduces crime in the area by 10%. It might be a little less than that, but by not an insignificant amount. That's the claim the CIA makes. And so, if there is a collective consciousness, so if you have consciousness and I have individual consciousness, and then the two of us together have a collective consciousness, well, it's not a leap of logic of any sort to say that the universe itself has its own consciousness. Where I think I diverge strongly from what I would call traditional theists is that I don't think this consciousness is by itself overtly intelligent or benevolent. Like, theists of the past have viewed God or the universe, or however you want to frame this concept or idea, as this sort of intentional force. That's what it is. That's what it is. That the Creator has been seen previously as intentional. That there has been an intention behind creation. That we are as we are because there is a design or a plan. Right? It's all part of God's plan. God works in mysterious ways. These sorts of phrases that I'm sure you've heard. Right? I don't think about it that way. I think that the Creator and the force of creation in the universe are dealing with this the same way we are dealing with this. They also don't know what's going on. And that we are all collectively together attempting to discover what it is this is. That we are all attempting to discover as a people, humans, and as the underlying energy, the consciousness of the universe, we are attempting to negotiate and discover what is existence, why are we here, what are we supposed to do, and also, and I think that this is one that oftentimes get missed, what is it exactly that we're capable of? Not simply just, well, what are we supposed to do, but simply, what is it that we are capable of achieving? Well, a more fun question, does nothingness have consciousness? I mean, nothingness is such a difficult concept for us to grapple onto. Like, we really struggle with the concept of nothingness because we don't have a good, like, It's the antithesis of what we are. We don't understand what nothingness is outside of this sort of abstraction, right? Just an absence of stuff. Humans are scum of the earth. Leave the planet to these other species. I don't know. I just say we go back to being like the squirrels, right? Just be a squirrel. A squirrel. Yes, but do you think this larger consciousness is a piece of shit like human consciousness? I just think that it is by and large, not, the word isn't indifferent, but definitely like, it's clearly created everything that is possible. Well, I shouldn't say clearly. That's a bridge too far, but that my idea is that it's created everything that's logically possible to be created simply because it is the force of creation. That it didn't do it because it was like, and then I'll make a garden with Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Like that's not, it didn't think it through like that. It wasn't intellectual. It just created it because it could be created. And that's it. Like, that there is an infinite amount of universes filled with an infinite amount of possibilities, and those infinite amount of possibilities literally account for every single eventuality that is possible to be created. So that means that beside this universe, there is another universe that exists perfectly exactly the same, except in this sentence, I say a different number other than the number 4. That is an infinite array of universes that are created based on this exclusive moment, and every possibility and inevitability and eventuality that falls out as a consequence of changing that number. Like, that's what infinity means. And we actually do not have a grip on that. Like, I watch shows like Rick and Morty is a good example of this, right? And Rick and Morty has kind of based in canon this idea that they can go to another universe that's similar to the universe that they are in, except, and then just replace the Rick and Morty that lived there and then continue forward as if nothing has changed. And from their perspective, as soon as they get over the mental mindfuck that it is that you can do that, then it is the same. That their mom and their dad and their sister and their brother and all these people, they're all the same. Everything's the same. The only thing that's different is them. Right? But they're only technically different. They're still actually the same. And that the differences that may arise are actually very slight. But in the Rick and Morty universe, there's this idea that there's not a lot of these. And I'm like, no, bro. There is an infinite amount of those. You exist infinitely, literally. There's an infinite amount of you. There is literally someone there is you exactly in another universe directly parallel to this universe that exists and that is not different. That has made every decision you've ever made and will die the same way that you will die. Because the difference that happened in that universe to make that universe arise had nothing to do with you. That's what infinity means. That's what an infinite consciousness would mean. And so if you had the power to step into alternative universes and replace your alternate universe self, you could do it an infinite amount of times because that's what infinity means. And we don't have a grip on it because infinity is big. We have trouble grappling with a billion. Like, we have trouble grappling with a billion. I remember for decades, it's been decades now, people were walking around being like, well, $1 billion, that's like $1 million. No, it's fucking not. Like, no, it's fucking not. All these people walking around being like, it's totally reasonable and rational to have $1 billion. It's just a B. No, it's fucking not. $1 billion is a fuck ton more than $1 million. Just a crazy amount higher. Like, I don't even really have the language for it in this moment to describe how much more money $1 billion is than $1 million. Like, with $1 billion, you can give 100 people $1 million, and they will likely do whatever you want. But once you realize that $1 million is actually a really steep bribe, that most of these hack politicians and frauds will betray the entire nation for $100,000, right? Go sit on a board of directors for a 6-figure salary, right? I'll be in the 1% with $100,000 salary, right? So you can do that like 1,000 times. You can literally buy the parliament by yourself with $1 billion, and the wealthiest Canadian in Canada has $50 billion. Like, get the fuck right out of here, man. Get the fuck right out of here. And so if we can't grapple with $1 billion, if we don't understand what $1 billion would do, right, then we don't understand the concept of infinity. We don't have it. And we're not going to get it. Right? We're not going to get it. Mainly because a lot of people will just be like, well, what does it even fucking matter? Well, what does it fucking matter? Maybe actually thinking about your environment and thinking about the world that you live in has a profound effect on what happens in that environment. But, what do I know? Grinning says, I find the observer effect collapsing the wave function is the most supportive fact that the consciousness exists in the universe since the beginning. I don't believe it, but there's evidence. And one of the things that I think is worthwhile when I talk about this kind of stuff is that I don't care if you believe it, right? I just care if you think about it. That's all. Like, I'm not a fundamentalist. I'm not going to be like, you're a heretic if you disagree with me, burn at the stake, right? That's not the point, right? Like, the point is that you just think about it, that you expand your mind somehow. And you don't expand your mind by not using it, right? You expand your mind by using it. And by struggling with concepts that maybe you don't understand even. Or if you do understand, maybe you disagree with. And use that as a sharpening stone. Why do you disagree with it? Can you make it sharper? Can you make your disagreement sharper? Jahoni, good to see you, my man. Are you saying exclusively the universe contains consciousness, or that the universe as a concept has an independent consciousness? I think it's closer to the second one. What I mean, mate, is that the universe itself has its own consciousness. But that consciousness, it's like, this is a real chicken and the egg thing. Like, it's both. Like, we are the universe, right? We are not independent of the universe. We are not separate from the universe. It's not the universe and then us. We are the universe. The universe has created us. We come out of the universe, and we are of the universe. And when we die, we return to the universe, right? That we tend to have this pattern of thought, and I've seen it happen, where people think of humanity as separate from creation, and it's not. That we are somehow observing all of creation as separate entities that are not themselves part of creation, and we definitely are. And so it isn't that the independent consciousness, that the universe is conscious in and of itself, separate from us. It's that, and it's not that the universe exists and then there is consciousness within the universe. It is that the consciousness in the universe is of the universe. Is that it's connected. That the consciousness that the universe creates is the consciousness of the universe because it's of the universe. That if we are conscious, so too is the universe. Because we are of the universe and the universe is of us. By definition. So there is a consciousness that exists outside of your independent individual consciousness. And that consciousness is made up of all of the other independent consciousnesses. That we can come together and create a collective consciousness. And that if we all did it all at once, all together, that we would start manifesting the actual consciousness of the universe itself. That idea seems so far away from us because we are crazy. Like we are like mental. Like we're just a bunch of screaming monkeys listening to people who are like, you should go kill yourself and here's some cock milking porn that is actually China and you're punishing me for that by making me watch a video. I'm gonna publish an article in the National Post about it. Like, that's who we are. Like, Peterson is exactly the right person to show every other species in the universe, should they be paying attention, how they should stay the fuck away from us. Also, our physical reality is like an online RPG. Our bodies are like avatars. Nature is designed with fractal patterns, etc. We don't really exist, yet we believe we exist. I heard recently somebody, I think it was Rainn Wilson actually said, he said, we believe we are humans that have spiritual experiences, but we are actually spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's a little bit closer to the mark. That hews close for me. There's something true there. That we like to think of as ourselves as human first, and then if you believe in any kind of spirituality, then that comes out of the material humanity. Whereas I think it is closer to the bone to say that we are spiritual beings first, that we are the energy first, and that we have constructed ourselves, or that we have been constructed into this human form, and that we're having this human experience. And when the human experience ends, as it must, because there's a timer, then we return to the spiritual configuration from whence we began. I think that seems more accurate to me. Jahoni says, as in the consciousness of the universe, the final sum of the consciousness or organisms contained within it, or if there's a consciousness external to the organisms contained within. Yeah, I feel like I went through that, bud. So I just repeat what I would say, which is that it's that the consciousness that arises from the universe is the consciousness of the universe. That it's the same. That you're trying to create like a separation wherein one does not exist. Aaron writes, good to see you, Aaron. If you say the universe is conscious to the level we are conscious, wouldn't the universe have intentions to the extent that we do? I don't understand what you're saying. Yeah, now you're getting into some interesting stuff. And again, it's worth saying, it doesn't understand that you understand. It understands that you grapple with it. That's what's the most important thing to me. Like, I genuinely do not care if you think that I'm a crazy person. Like, it doesn't matter to me at all. I don't care at all if you think that I'm a nutter, right? What matters to me is that you think about it and you struggle with it. That's what matters. And if you disagree with it, come up with a good reason for why you disagree with it. To sharpen your argument, right? Make it a sharper argument. And but we don't know what the intentions of the universe are, right? Like, we can guess. I have a theory, right? My theory is that the universe is just trying to figure itself out, and that's it. Like, its intention is not to like usher in an age of white purity or usher in this or that or anything, to bring judgment or justice or any of this kind of stuff. It's literally just to be like, what am I? What? Like, that's it. That's the extent of all of creation. Is all of creation basically just being like, oh, I created everything because I exist and I'm capable of it. What? And that's it. And then there's also this, right? That our minds are not designed to know. There are limitations to the human mind. We're monkeys, man. Like, we're monkeys. Like, we're only going to get so far. Like, straight up, we're having a very limited experience. We're in a very low bandwidth, limited capacity here with our fleshy little mind brains, right? Impressive though they may be, comparatively to the overwhelming power of the universe, they are very tiny. They are a dim light, comparatively. But that's okay, right? We're all trying our goddamn best here. Yet notice how capitalism wants to rob us of our consciousness, turn us into machines. I think that's true. A human resource, like that term, isn't fucking evil. Yeah. Old stock. Be chipmunks. They remember where they hide stuff. They plan. Content got COVID, my man. My man, I gotta tell you, when you weren't here initially, I was worried for the worst, and you came in, COVID. How's it going for you, bud? Are you doing okay? Like, I feel like I got COVID not that long ago, but it was just kind of like a bad cold. I hope you're doing okay out there, buddy. Demand Better, good to see you. Saw your song on Socialist Action's YouTube page. Lots of good artists on the left. Oh, that's great. I'm glad they posted that. I wish they had told me they had posted that. That's wonderful. Thank you, Demand Better. I appreciate that. Yeah, I did some songs for a Socialist Action event, and that's lovely. That's really lovely. It's so good, and I really recommend to everybody, I'll say it again right now, get involved with a local organization. Get involved with a local organization, because if you get involved with a local organization, it's going to soothe your soul. You're going to feel better. Just standing around with them, you're going to feel better. It's just going to be nice. It's going to uplift you. So I recommend doing it. Jahone says, I think we can learn a lot of stuff we've previously considered impossible to know. Thought experiments can teach us a lot. Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important for us to do, and I think it is happening, is to sort of break down our, this sounds like kooky bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't that long ago that if you were a person talking about aliens, that was just kooky bullshit. And now you've got the United States government being like, yeah, aliens. So when people get talking about things like astrology, when people get talking about things like crystals, when people get talking about things like collective consciousness, when people get talking about these sorts of things, I think it's important to lower your guard a little and be a little bit more vulnerable to it. And you don't need to accept it. You don't need to become like a crystal ear. You don't need to like put on a hat or something, right? But just dwelling in the space that it's possible that this exists. And if it's not that it's possible that it exists, dwelling in the space of trying to understand why or what it is that's being articulated. Because that's what I find a lot of spiritual practices end up being. Is that it's just a method to articulate something that hitherto could not be articulated, or that it was difficult to articulate. Like, I got this poster behind me, right? How do you talk about emotions? Emotions are difficult to talk about, and we have a very like inside out sort of version of emotions. That is not bad. I don't think that the inside-outification of sort of how we think about emotions is necessarily a bad way to think about these things. But we tend to think about our emotions as something that happens in our brain. Whereas the chakra system that I follow insists that emotions are part of your body. That emotions don't come from your brain, they come from your body. And even the thinking about that, even the dwelling on that idea, I think is useful. Even as just even as like a secular visualization guide, as a way to think about yourself, is useful. And that's how I think about a lot of this stuff. That if you find it interesting, if you think that there might be something there that helps articulate something that has been hitherto unarticulatable for you, then I say do it, and do it shamelessly, right? Like a lot of these people who are like following crystals and stuff, like I don't think they actually believe that like the crystal will resonate in your soul to make your heart sing into the kind of blah blah blah. I think they just like crystals, and that they're finding ways and to articulate spiritual things. And if they find it useful to grab onto a red crystal to help them focus on something like anger or love or compassion or anything, then fucking do it. I don't give a fuck. Like, there's no rules here. Like, there's literally no rules. I don't really believe in multiple universes. I tend to think that everything possible happened at the beginning, and this experience is what emerged. See, the only thing that makes me disagree with this is that I can imagine an alternative universe, right? You can imagine an alternative universe, right? And if you can imagine it, the force of creation can imagine it. But the force of creation doesn't have a brain, right? It doesn't have that capacity. It's a different thing. And, like, so if the force of creation imagines an alternative universe, then it exists, right? Because that's the only way it can. Like, what are we but the imagination of the creative force of the universe, right? Like, what we that is what we are. Is just the imagination of creation. And if I can imagine something exists, then I think it can too. The difference is that when I imagine it, it exists in the sort of nebulous, sort of gooey brain. Dude, I love talking about this. It's so easy to derail me with this conversation. It is my favorite subject. It is. Like, the only reason I don't turn this whole channel just into this kind of spiritual talk is because I want to talk about the crazy nonsense, the truth and justice, and communism. Like, I would like to talk about those things, for sure. But it's so easy to derail me with this stuff. If universe means one, is infinity with odds at the concept of the universe? So, turtles all the way down. I love that one. Incidentally, you said turtles, and so it totally triggered me. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie is a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I consider myself to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles connoisseur. I have watched probably everything that has been produced with the Ninja Turtles. It's just like a childhood thing. I love it. I'm a little kid in my heart. And this iteration, they really doubled down on the teenage part of it. They're the youngest they've ever been in this iteration. And it really, really works. It really, really works. It's really, really good. And it's also one of the things it has going for it is it like, one of my big complaints about modern movie making is that we have all this CGI and yet everything looks the same. And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are like, no, we can make this look different. We can have a unique and interesting art style of our own, and they do, and it really works. So the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, So, universe. Uni means one. Verse means word. That theists of yore, who were creating the ideas of what the universe actually was, and who were studying things like physics, people like Isaac Newton, right? They understood that this universe, that this existence, this plane of reality that we are in, is one word from the voice of God. That's where the word universe comes from. Is that this reality is but one word from the voice of God. And so there's always been this theory of a multiverse within the sciences and within theology. Because why shouldn't God create multiple universes in multiple places? Why shouldn't that exist? It seems more realistic to believe that it would. Because, and again, I think it comes down to this concept of infinity. That we live in an infinite reality. That this reality might not be infinite, but reality itself, creation itself, is infinite. And we don't really know what that means. Because it's well beyond our comprehension. Oh yeah, how's that new variant, Cotton? Worse, better? I've talked to people who think that there's a variant that's going to come through that's going to knock everybody on their asses. I like the idea of the free lunch universe, that the universe is equal parts energy and anti-energy, and that if you did the math, everything in the world would equal out to zero. The universe could be nothing. Yeah. I mean, I think there is Isaac Asimov might agree with you. There's a really interesting short story that Isaac Asimov wrote, where the short story is about humanity creating an artificial intelligence, that the purpose of the artificial intelligence is to discover what the meaning of life is, right? And he follows this artificial intelligence through millennia of time. Every time it's humanity approaching the artificial intelligence and being like, "Have you discovered what the meaning of life is?" And constantly, its answer is processing information. Every time it's processing information, and then the story ends with the AI being the last consciousness that exists in the universe as the universe has begun the process of collapsing back in on itself. And then finally, the AI saying, processing complete, and then igniting the spark that recreates the universe once more, and the process begins anew. So Asimov, I think, believed, or at least articulated within that story, the idea that this could very much be a breathing out and then a retraction in and then a breathing out, and that that process itself could also simply be infinite, just an infinite creation, destruction, creation, destruction, over and over and over again forever, and the universe going through this infinite process of rediscovering itself constantly. Like, really, when you think about it, the force of creation is in quite a predicament. Like, I don't think it can stop it. Like, what is this? What's happening here? That we have this concept of like a creator or a consciousness or a God of some kind. But it seems to me like should such a force or such a being exist, that it's trapped too. That we're just here and so is it. And it doesn't know what's going on. And I don't know why everybody keeps asking me. I'm trying to figure it out, okay? Let me just deal with this. Like, chances are good that if the universe has a consciousness, it knows more than we do. Like, it knows more than we do, but it only knows as much as we know in this moment, right? Yeah, I love talking about this shit, man. That's great. It's fun to think about. I don't have any real solid positions on this topic. That might be the best position, Aaron. Not having any good positions is probably the safest position. Just definitely like, well, something's going on. Anyway, how about that baseball team? Oh, Cotton saying never had it before, very new. Oh, Lord. Oh, is it terrible? First time I got COVID, it was terrible for the first 2 days. Would you say the universe has intentions because we do? This is, like, what are the intentions of the universe? We don't know. And I'm a bit loath to start to ascribe intention to the universe, because what follows is usually some guy being like, I know the will of creation, and the will of the creator is to round up the Jews, right? That kind of thing. I think it's pretty unlikely that the universe has goals. Because, like, what possible goals could something that has this power want to have? Like, what like, for real? Like, let's have a serious conversation about what goals could such a force even have. Like, the only thing that I can even begin to think about seriously is just, like, what am I? Just that real basic thing that we all ask ourselves. Like, what am I? Well, chances are good it's trying to figure that out too. And that its intent is to discover that very thing. Right? But, like, what possible goals? Like, and any goal that such a being, a being that is capable of creating one universe, let alone multiple universes, like, what goals could it possibly have? What intention could it possibly have? right? Like, it just seems to me like it's just trying to figure shit out to the best of its ability. You know? Like, that's all. I think the trouble is that we like to think of consciousness as personal. Consciousness starts by being unaware of itself and not attached to anything in particular. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, consciousness doesn't need intentions, that's right. We don't even know why there are 3 generations of matter. We won't answer the question of consciousness until we understand the building blocks. Yeah, for sure. I think that's true too. I dig your point on crystals and astrology. I'm very atheist and against superstition. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I'll point this out, Jahone, okay? It's easy to be an atheist in America because the theists have lost their fucking minds, right? If the theists are walking around being like, God's gonna send back a zombie wizard from the Middle East, but the Jews are bad, and we gotta make sure that we pray to him every day and usher in the apocalypse so that when we die we'll wear golden thrones and crowns on our head, and that's why the Muslims are bad. Like, if that's what's going on, it's easy to be an atheist, right? I'm not trying to besmirch your position. I'm not trying to say that you're a bad person or that you're wrong or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, like, the theists have made it very easy on you. You know, it's not difficult to look at these guys and be like, I don't think so. Seems wrong that Jesus Christ came down to earth to die for our sins so that we can persecute the gays. You know, like real dumb fuck shit. Like, the universe is that God's love and God's will is infinite and eternal, and what he creates is beyond our comprehension and person, but people who are trans have mental illnesses. That's what's going on there. Yep, that's right. Like, easy to be an atheist. Not tough. Like, I've never seen a group that is less self-aware than American Christians. Like, people who are literally walking around with a book that's like, give your money to the poor and love each other. Think of your neighbor as yourself. Love that neighbor as yourself, unless he's gay, trans, black, or Jewish. Then you can do what you like. Like, not tough. But a thing like tarot, for example, is very functional and a good ritual. It can help you just by thinking more. I actually love the tarot because one of the things I think about all the time, I started thinking this way because I went through a big board game phase. And really, when you think about it, every single time you roll a set of dice, right? And tarot is like this. But every single time you roll a set of dice, you are, in essence, saying to the universe, this one's up to you. This is on you, fate. Whatever you think, wheel of fate, whatever you think, universal forces that exist. And what's interesting about dice rolling games, or games that have dice rolls in them, is that even though the dice rolls are intrinsically random, we all agree that that's still fair. That even though it can be the case that a person can roll dice and just win a game because their dice rolls came up correctly, so it's not their own strategic ability, it's not how well they played the game, it's literally they just kept rolling the right number, right? And the right number just kept coming up for them, and so they just got the best position and the best amount of resources, or the best amount of this or the best amount of that. But we can complain about that a little bit, and we do. But we still all intrinsically feel like that's fair, right? That we all agreed that we were going to cede control to these dice, and then the dice came up that way, and that's it. You got the kiss from the universe. You got the little peck on the cheek, right? And tarot cards are kind of like that, I think, where you are essentially sitting down with a deck of cards where each card is ascribed with a meaning. And there's that, and there's this ritual to it, yeah. The ritual of laying out the cards and laying out the intention. What is this reading about? all of that kind of stuff. And in many ways, you are, like literally, you are beseeching the fates, the random source of luck and energy for some kind of guidance. And that if it is the case that the cards that come up are simply just random and there is no deeper meaning other than the meaning that you ascribe to them, well, that still has value. That's still valuable, because the meaning that you are ascribing to the cards is a self-exploration. And the fact that the card draws are random helps with that self-exploration, because it forces you to contemplate things in your life that you may not have contemplated previously. So I used to do a little bit of tarot. I've moved away from tarot. I don't connect with it as seriously as I think some people do. And for me, it kind of started just becoming a game more than anything. Like I wasn't really doing it seriously. And so I moved away from it. But I know people who are big into tarot, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, off you go. Like if the tarot cards say you should break up and you deeply agree, you now know your heart better. Yeah, exactly, Jahoni. If the cards say break up and you're horrified and sad, maybe you shouldn't break up. Yeah, you know? Yeah. Like, at its base level, even if it's completely secular and it's just totally random and there's literally nothing going on whatsoever, it is a system to confront your emotions. That's what it is. Like, that's what you've described. It's just a random generation machine for you to go through, to put meaning in, to confront yourself. And that by itself gives it value, right? Because how many of those actually exist? How many systems actually exist in your life where you genuinely confront your emotional self on purpose with the intention to do so? And tarot does that. Tarot absolutely does that. Mikhail says, if we are the imagination of the universe, it seems like the same kind of idealism that is problem with capitalism. Creation destruction alone makes a binary fallacy. I mean, Mikhail, I think with you that we're stumbling into language limitations. I think that this is a problem with this conversation, is that we're never going to get it right. You know what I mean? Like, it's never going to actually be correct. That our language is limited. That we don't have that if there is shades of gray, or if there are alternative things, let's say, to creation and destruction, then I don't think we actually have the language to articulate it efficiently or effectively. And if we do, then we should bring that into the conversation, without a doubt. But it just seems to me like it's... of course, everything that we're discussing here is going to be much more gray and difficult and complex and strange and unusual, right? The universe is complex, difficult, strange, and unusual. Take a look at how we're responding to trans people. I think that's a great example to bring up, and a timely one, and one that seems to be persisting and not going away, right? We just seem completely incapable of getting our minds around the idea that this type of person exists, and we seem to be obsessed with it as a people. And I really do think it is because we as a people have simply not accepted that such a thing is even possible. So the language or the understanding of it has kind of created a mental fritz. We're in this like we're having a little brain fart moment because we can't get over it, right? And similar things happen within this kind of larger conversation, right? Generation Y Me, for some heavy but good short philosophy about consciousness and thinking, read A Life by Gilles Deleuze. Arnold Toynbee has some interesting things to say about creativity in his book, A Study of History. I love this. We always get to this. There's always this phrase of like, I'm going to share the thing that I've read. And I love it. I love it. I might look some of this stuff up. I've been trying to get through Anti-Oedipus by Deleuze. To create one and then another out of the joy of creation. I'd like to believe that it's about joy. Like, it would be nice to believe that the creator is doing so joyfully. I worry that it's simply happening, right? That theists always do this, where they ascribe some kind of emotional state or intention to the creator, whereas my thinking is that it's not so much that. And I think the reason why theists do it is that they want to believe that the creator has some kind of design or will or deeper understanding and is really actually looking out for us in the end of it all, right? That there's that kind of thing, and that at least somebody knows what's going on, right? I don't think the creator knows what's going on. I think it's just happening to it, and it's dealing with it too. And I think that thought is a much harder thing for us to accept, and is a much more terrifying idea. And is a much more terrifying idea for the creator itself. That it itself is trapped within this perpetual, never-ending process of this creative system. Like, what is it? And that's not me as an outsider asking of it, what is it? That is it asking itself, what is it? Like, what is it? And it doesn't know. Like, maybe it does come to know. That's well beyond my capacity. Like, I'm never going to know that. But in this moment, at this time, as it's going through the process of its own creation, because the only way that it can actually understand anything about itself is by experiencing itself, which is why each and every one of us is actually an aspect of the creator. So we are actually divine beings discussing divinity amongst one another. I think that's important. But as it's going through that process, it doesn't actually know. That maybe it does in a much larger meta sort of sense. Like, if we all end up back in the light pool, it's like, oh yeah. But right now, in this place where I am right now, it does not know. Which is wild to think about. And I think a much more honest way of thinking about it. I think that there's a kind of laziness to be like, and God loves and understands everything that is possible. It's all in the hands of God now. God moves in mysterious ways. I just think shit happens, man, and like we're all dealing with it, including the creator. I simply couldn't with that book. It's so long and confusing. I basically got through 2 chapters of 1,000 plateaus. And that was complicated enough. Mikhail's like, good, glad to hear I'm not the only one. Fantastic. I find it much more clear in Eminence a Life. The first chapter is the last thing he wrote, and it's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. I know it's nearing the end of the stream, but where do you land on free will versus determinism? So, I don't think free will matters as much as people think it does. Typically, the people who are like, free will, are just like, that's what really matters. And I really have come to a place where I say, let's say free will exists. Okay? Let's just say it does. Okay? We all have free will. Great. You can do what you like whenever you like at any time, whatever you want to do. Okay? You can stand up right now and just walk out into the ocean, right? You can do whatever you like. Fine. I don't think it matters that much. To me, an individual standing up and proclaiming that they have free will is not too much different than a grain of sand on the bottom of the ocean declaring that they have free will. You know, Like it's not as important as one thinks. That I am willing to cede the possibility that there is a variable within the confines of all creation called free will, and that you have it, and that free will allows you to operate freely to the degree that you are able to. But the real truth is that there's an infinite amount of other variables that you do not have control of by definition, and it is just a much, much more likely, free will or no, that you are going to respond to those external variables, right? That, like, yes, it's possible, and yes, you can stand up and walk into the ocean, but, like, you're not gonna, right? Like, you're going to make the best decision that you think you can given the variables that you've got, right? Like, that's what you're going to do, right? And sure, you could go off and run into a forest, and sure, you could go and live on an island, or sure, you could do that, but you're not gonna. Because, like, that's just nuts. Like, that's just crazy town. But but unless something happens and then you do. But I'm genuinely more of the belief that we typically respond to the something happens. And if you do finally get to a place where you come to see that, no, it's my free will, it's I am here, this is my existence, I would like to I have the power, I have the force, I can exert, I'm the author of my own fate, I am all of this kind of, like, all of that kind of individualist thinking. Well, if you actually internalize that and you actually believed it, then really the truth is that you would be happy not doing much, right? That if you actually did believe in this concept of free will, you would come to realize that, oh, I'm whole and complete as I am, and I don't need to pursue anything. I can just exist as I am. And that's fine. That this idea of ambition and going off and achieving something or doing all and getting into the world and causing a ruckus and changing the world and so on and so forth, right? It doesn't actually matter that much. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to make you content. It's not going to make you whole. It's not going to. What is going to do that is sitting down in a dark room and talking to yourself, right? Figuring out what's going on inside of your own consciousness, determining what it is that you actually care about as a randomly generated creature in the world. And so, even if free will exists, I just don't think it has the impact that people think it does. I think that there's an infinite amount of external variables that impact us much more greatly than something like the concept of free will. And then on top of that, I think that if you did actually accept fully inside of yourself that free will, that you did have free will and you are a free agent and you can do what you like, well, then you're basically just going to sit and contemplate or just enjoy life, right? Because that's what anybody with free will would want to do. That the most ambitious people are actually the least free, right? That they've trapped themselves in these external variables that are around them. So I think to land on it, I do think that free will exists. I just don't think it exists in the way that we get it presented to us. Like the Petersonian, like, you can do it, get out there and go slay a dragon and all that kind of stuff. If you actually believe in the concept of free will, then you understand completely. Slaying dragons, what's the point of it? Like, for real, what's the point of it? Like, what are you doing there, champ? What are you up to? Right? Because the truth is that, like, that quote-unquote dragon you're going to slay, like, it's probably somebody else just fucking trying to slay dragons too. So you got two dragon slayers just shitting on each other, right? They build these entire institutions just to fuck with everybody. And everybody would be better off if we just went and sat in fields and looked at the sky. That if we actually have free will, then that's what we should do. I've been tripping out on Taoism, some good stuff. Tao is like a godlike concept, but also not. Yeah, I think it's important to understand Taoism as a counterbalance to Confucianism. That Confucianism, when it was arising, was very much like a class system that was about order. And there's nothing wrong with this, because I think Confucianism comes up in a very chaotic period of time that people are really looking for stability, and I think Confucianism gave them some stability. But Taoism was a counterbalance to it. And so if you really want to understand Taoism a little bit better, I recommend investigating Confucianism. That the two are kind of counterbalances to one another. And interestingly, like the counterbalance of Taoism to Confucianism are actually like that Taoist symbol, right? The symbol of the white and the black. That Confucianism on one side and Taoism on the other. So it's an interesting pursuit. Yeah, I mean, capitalists want you to believe that you have free will so that they can sell you a life. That's the point, right? They want to sell you a package called the American Dream. And if you come to believe that my free will is the most important thing, that all of these other variables are dwarfed in comparison to my free will, which is the number one thing that matters. Nothing matters more than free will. Nothing. The force of creation itself bows at the altar of my free will, right? Which is actually a serious thing that these people believe. Well, if you believe that, then you are susceptible. You are susceptible to salesmanship, and you are susceptible to a belief that as you're going down this path, you are the one making the decisions. You are the author of your own fate. It's you. And what it lets you do is it puts you in a real state of disregarding or judging someone else's experience. You can look at a homeless person and be like, they made the bad decisions. Because we all know free will is the most important thing. My free will matters more than the forces of creation itself. And if you genuinely believe that, then you can be sold a bill of goods. And you could be sold a life that isn't really of benefit to you, or of value to you, or of value to the society, or of value to anybody, right? That's why you end up with all of these, like, I really do think that, like, Al Bundy from Married with Children is like the icon for this. That here is a guy who essentially achieved the American dream, right? He works a very easy job, a low-level job to be sure. He's a shoe salesman in a mall. He's got a wife, a kid, a house. He's got a wife, two kids, a dog, a house, a car, goes on vacation, right? And he's fucking miserable. He's constantly living in a dream world where he's reliving his glory days as a football star in his high school, right? And it all essentially boils down to the reality that Al Bundy is not actually living his own life. He's living the American dream. And it's made him miserable. And I think that that's happening a lot these days. That people are pursuing what they think they should be pursuing because they're being sold a package. Guys like Andrew Tate with his Bugattis are selling a package. Money up. Focus on yourself. The manosphere. They're selling a package. This is what life's about. This is what you're supposed to pursue. This is how you're going to do it. You need to take control of your life. You need to focus on this. Clean up your room. Do all this kind of stuff. Work out. Get hard. You're the author of your own fate. You can do it. And they will. And they'll do it. And they'll live a life that isn't theirs. They'll live this life they've been sold. And they'll be miserable. Because at the end of the day, you can never be content if you're living someone else's life. And you will never live your own life so long as you live the life that you've been sold. And so the truth about a concept like free will is that if you actually had free will, if you actually believed in the concept of free will, you would take a look at all of these frauds. You would take a look at your Andrew Tates and your Jordan Petersons and your Ben Shapiros, all these salesmen for capitalism who are just trying to sell you a different version of the American dream that we all know has already failed. And you would look at them and you would say, oh, no, I'm going to live my life. And I'm going to be fine with that. And I don't care what you think about it. Because you're just salesmen. And then you would essentially get on with living a quiet, normal existence. Just trying to be happy, not trying to cause any problems for anyone, and just dealing with your own existence. Because that would be the most important thing that you would care about. But that's all assuming we have it in the first place. Anyway, guys, we've reached the end of this one. I do have to say this. We got a guy called Dogsy. Jesus, no offense, but I didn't see your cam when I clicked on you. Got the full Mark's beard. Yes, sir. I'm not offended by that at all. That's a kind thing to say, my man. We're just closing up today, bud. Come back tomorrow. I'll be streaming 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good to see you, my man. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.